Hi, Jake. We're live on YouTube right now. Hi, Peter. Just to let you know, we're live on YouTube right now. Oh, I don't have any audio for you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Perfect.
Madison, this is Branter. Just a quick test for audio. Coming in clear?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear. Thanks.
Thank you.
Madison, it's Don McConnell here. Is our audio good?
Your audio is good.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Madison, it's Susan Hamilton Beach. This is just a test. Is it clear?
Yep, I can hear you. No problem. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We're live on YouTube, and Shaw's getting ready to go in a few minutes.
So you don't want me to use my mic? Has Jonathan called? We are live on Shaw.
Okay, Madam Clerk, are you ready to proceed? So
Yes, we are.
before you get going, I just wanted to take a minute. I had a few people reach out to me this week and comment, I think accurately, that our recent COVID numbers might give people kind of reason to feel like maybe we've done what we need to do and become complacent. And I would indicate that I share that concern. I think it's really critical that we, recognize the good work that got us to a situation where we have very few active COVID cases. But I think we really have to, more importantly, recognize that the pandemic is not slowing down, and the occurrences of positive COVID cases is increasing. It's increasing across the province, and that we have to make sure, if we want to keep ourselves and our community safe, that we really commit, all of us, to follow public health advice. So I'm going to repeat that advice as I have in a number of meetings. But I think it's important that we all be kind of sensitive to it and aware of it. It's important that if we're not feeling well, we don't go to work. And if our kids aren't feeling well, we don't send them to school. It's important that you wash your hands frequently and try and not touch your face, as difficult as that might be. When you're out and about the community, physical distance, keep 2 meters between you and anybody who is not in your household. We want to minimize our social interactions outside of our household. And when we are inside facilities or public spaces or private spaces with people that are not in our own household, we want to wear non-medical masks to ensure that we reduce the spread of the virus. Keep track of your contacts, and if you're not feeling well, make sure you get a COVID test. We want to ensure that we continue to keep the occurrences in Sault Ste. Marie low and Algoma low. And I want to thank everybody who is working hard to do that. I want to thank all of our frontline healthcare workers and our frontline workers, like our bus drivers here at the city and our grocery store workers across the community for what they do every day. So I appreciate the opportunity to send that message. Madam Clerk, we can begin the meeting, please.
Under agenda item 1, I have a motion by councillors Dufour and Gardy, resolved that the minutes of regular council meeting of November 9, 2020 be approved.
All in favor? The motion is carried.
And under agenda item 3, declaration of pecuniary interest.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about that. I've got item 6.4, the EDF funding application for the airport, as they are a client of my law firm. And item 6.8, the GFL Memorial Garden Suite leases, as the outcome affects my employer.
Anybody else? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, we can proceed.
Under agenda item 4, a motion by Councillors Dufour and Scott, resolved that the agenda for November 30, 2020 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
And under proclamations, agenda item 5.1, World AIDS Day.
I have a proclamation for World AIDS Day. Whereas COVID-19 has brought attention to pandemics and how they impact the daily lives of individuals, in particular the most vulnerable populations of communities across the world. Whereas HIV/AIDS continues to be a major global public health issue, and each year HIV Awareness Week, Aboriginal AIDS Awareness Week, and World AIDS Day provide opportunities to put people living with HIV/AIDS at the center of our responsive approaches and commemorate those who have lost their lives to AIDS. Whereas the theme for World AIDS Day 2020 is Global Solidarity, Shared Responsibility, highlighting the importance of engaging communities in the response to both HIV and AIDS and COVID-19. Whereas local health responses continue to address systemic barriers, stigma, and social inequities with Oklahoma Public Health, the Group Health Center, HIV/AIDS Resource Program, Surrey Hospital, and the Ontario Aboriginal HIV/AIDS Strategy at the forefront, working together for innovative responses to HIV and AIDS. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim December 1st, 2020 as World AIDS Day, with the previous week being HIV Awareness Week and the following week being Aboriginal AIDS Awareness Week, and encourage all citizens to support the initiatives of local organizations that are committed to increasing awareness and support people living with HIV and AIDS. Thank you.
And under agenda item 5.2, Shine the Light.
A proclamation here. The Shine the Light campaign is focused on raising awareness of violence against women by turning cities, regions, and countries purple for the month of November. Whereas this is an opportunity for the City of Sault Ste. Marie to come together in support of further development of a society free of violence against women. And whereas the color purple is a symbol of courage, survival, and honor, and has come to symbolize efforts to end violence against women. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim the month of November 2020 as Shine the Light, and invite all members of the community to shine a purple light to demonstrate support and hope for women who have been abused. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Agenda item 5.3, the Ontario Finnish Rest Home Association, and Paul Belair, the Executive Director, is on the call.
Welcome to Council, Mr. Belair.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to all the council members for making time on a very packed agenda for a what I hope to be a very brief presentation. I understand that most of you have the presentation in front of you, and Madison, I see, has brought it up onto the screen. So Madison, if you can just skip over to slide number 3, please. So a little bit of background on the Ontario Finnish Rest Home Association. We're a nonprofit charity located in the Soo, of course. It was founded in the early 70s by the Finnish community with a goal to provide housing and care facilities, essentially, initially rather, for the Finnish population, but over time that has grown to include every walk of life that requires this level of care and housing. Slide 4. So our housing facilities consist of 4 buildings. Our oldest building, Swami Estamaya, is 134 apartments. Kotitalo, which is an assisted living residence with 111 apartments. Mauno Kailakoti, which is a 63-bed nursing home at present, and our newest building, Usikoti, which is 85 apartments. So why am I here today? So if we can skip over to slide number 6, Madison. Back in 2015, we did an application to the Ministry of Health to redevelop our nursing home. As previously mentioned, it's currently 63 beds. It was built in the early 90s. And it is beginning to, let's say, show its age, and does not meet the current design standards for nursing homes in Ontario. We are going to be building a 128-bed facility, and with the development agreement having been signed just this past August, we're now in a position to move forward. If you go on to the next slide, I'll show you the footprint of what the building will be located. We are looking at a 5-story building with 4 resident home areas of 32 beds apiece, which will bring us to our 128-bed allotment. Okay, next slide. So what it means to our community. Following slide. So right now, the proportion of area residents that are 65 plus is growing. I'm sure that comes as no surprise to anyone on the line tonight. In the next 10 to 15 years, we can expect that trend to keep going. And by 2036, projections indicate that upwards to 30% of area residents will be seniors, 65 plus. Now, when you combine that with some of the other statistics that are unique to Sault Ste. Marie, such as we have the lowest number of hospital beds per capita per senior, we have the second lowest number of long-term care beds per capita per senior, and the demand for housing and care options is high now and only going to get higher every passing year. Next slide. This chart shows just what the long-term care inventory looks like in comparison with other communities in the Northeast. As you can see from this chart, except for Parry Sound, we have the lowest number of beds per senior 75 plus, per 1,000 senior 75 plus, at 96.37. And the following slide looks at the total inventory of hospital beds per senior 75 plus. And as you can see here, we have the lowest number there with Sault Area Hospital coming in at 28.4 beds per 1,000 seniors. So we do have a deficit in care options for this population. And as a response to that, we really wanted to do our part in the community in raising the number of beds in our total inventory. Next slide. So given the demographic trends, our goal, as I've said, is to increase our housing and care options in the community. And our proposed state-of-the-art facility is going to provide a higher standard of living for residents requiring 24/7 care. In addition to that, we learned a lot over the last 9 months or so from the COVID-19 pandemic, and are applying those learnings in the design of this building, which is still just drawings at this point. We thought it prudent to include some of our learnings around infection control and prevention in the design of the building, while it is just plans on paper. In addition, we're looking at technological resources to be able to reduce isolation for area seniors, knowing what we know now of infectious disease, and the how important it has become to keep people away from one another, isolated, socially distant. We've noticed that over the last 9 months, that has had a profound impact on the overall mental health of many of the seniors due to isolation. So we're seeking some technology to be able to lessen that isolation to the maximum amount possible and integrate those features into the new home. Next slide. So one of the benefits chiefly that the city may experience, in addition to the additional care needs or care options rather, and housing options for area seniors, is the creation of jobs. We estimate that approximately 37 nursing and personal care staff will be hired as a result of this project, 19 dietary staff, and 10 maintenance and environmental service workers for this project. In addition to 25 to 30 construction workers and tradespeople being employed every day that the project is ongoing, which we estimate to be about 18 to 24 months in total. So this is a large project, and we have to do some thinking about how we're going to pay for all of this. If we can skip over to slide 15. So as a charity, we have an obligation now to approach our stakeholders in the community to start raising money. And our fundraising goal is $2 million over the next 3 to 4 years, which will be variable depending on how construction progresses. Currently, we have some support from the Ontario Finnish Rest Home's own Ladies Auxiliary, which raised over $500,000 for us so far. The Ontario Finnish Foundation and the association have been working together to increase our visibility in the community. You may have noticed a larger presence on social media. Our website has been completely revamped, and we're launching a lot of email campaigns as well, just to try to increase our footprint digitally in order to make that fundraising campaign possible. Next slide, please. So our fundraising sources include events, which, as you know, with the current pandemic restrictions are virtually impossible to do in person. However, we found some innovative ways to raise money in other ways, such as 50-50 draws, Christmas appeals, outreach to the community for donations, and other kinds of fundraising options that are available to us that don't involve gathering people together in larger groups. A major part of our fundraising effort, however, is going to be an NOHFC application. I'm on slide 17 now, Madison. The initial Strategic Economic Infrastructure Plan, or SEIP, we did a first round of applications on that, which were approved, and we're currently moving on to the second round. It's a significant undertaking, as you can imagine, with an application of this size, because we are going for $1 million grant on this one. The overall project has been reviewed, and the segments have been distributed, and we're continuing to work through all of that. And this is where City Council comes in. If we move on to slide 18, one of the components of this is getting local support from our City Council and Economic Development Corporation. I mentioned the Economic Development Corporation on this slide. My apologies. I wanted to update this slide with City Council in it, but time ran out on me and I didn't get it to Madison in time. But this is a formal request from the Ontario Finnish Rest Home to City Council to put forward a motion in support of our application to NOHFC for this grant. So with that, and realizing that there's a lot on your agenda, I don't want to take up any more time than absolutely necessary. I'll open it to questions if there are any.
Okay, so we will take questions. I do have a list going here. So I have Councillor Gardy.
Mine's more of a comment, but
Go ahead.
it's my opinion that there's no doubt that we should support this effort. We have one of the oldest populations in Ontario with some of the least beds, accommodations, or healthcare spaces to support them. This is a worthwhile and necessary project as could come across our desks, I believe, and it's great to see the inclusion of what appears to be many facets of the project, which will equip it to be resilient should another pandemic hit, while at the same time mitigating the awful challenges of isolation that its residents have faced over the last several months. And Mr. Mayor, when it comes to the care of the elderly in this community, I hear nothing but great things about the Ontario Finnish Rest Home. And coming from the perspective of someone who had a family member experience the converse of that, the care and dignity you provide to your patients is something the management and staff should be extremely proud of. And I just want to say personally, thanks for all you do to care for some of our most precious people. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for those comments. That's great to hear. Thank you.
Councillor Hollingworth.
Thank you. I'm on the Associated Municipalities of Ontario Long-Term Care Home Committee. So like yourself, we're looking at ways to make sure that as we build new homes or refit new homes, that our seniors are well protected. So I want to say well done, and being very cautious and being on top of the infection control, especially isolation as well. So well done. So here's my question. I'm glad that you're going for funding. Have you heard, and I doubt that it's going to happen, but have you heard that the province will maybe delay any new builds until they figure out more of the requirements to prevent infection, to help with socialization and all the other challenges that we've read over and over again in the media? I know that I believe in April of 2021, there's going to be a final report outlining a very long list of suggestions and strong recommendations that long-term care homes and retirement homes need to be working towards. So I know this is a long process. I know that the application is going to take some time, but are you fearful that there could be a small delay, knowing that the task force in Ontario is looking at long-term care homes and so forth? Then I have one other question.
Okay. I had some initial concerns earlier on in the pandemic, thinking ahead that there would be changes to the design manual. So when a long-term care home project is undertaken by any organization, the expectation from the ministry is that you follow the design manual, which was put out in 2015. So this is well before the pandemic. And my concern was similar to yours, that there would be changes to that design manual and that we would be needing to do some redesign elements. With that concern in mind, I did make contact with the ministry, and they did inform me that they weren't planning any changes at this time. However, we're in close contact with the ministry every step of the way with our design. We're talking with them about some of the changes we want to make to the overall building features that promote better infection control and prevention, and are getting their blessings on those as we move forward. So we're being proactive. We're putting those things in of our own accord, just because it's the right thing to do. Knowing what we know now, and knowing that the next pandemic probably won't be 100 years from now, it'll likely be much, much sooner than that. We want to be prepared for that, for the good of the residents, finally, and not really worrying about what we have to do according to the manual. These are things that we want to do because they're just the right things to do.
Good. And my other question is, it's probably more a comment. I know that your ratio PSWs in nursing is very positive. And also, I know that you don't practice really a ward approach, which is what's being changed in other long-term care homes. So like my colleague, Councillor Gardy, said, it's wonderful care that you provide. And hitos. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, do we have any more questions? I see none. Paul, I just want to reiterate what Councillor Gardy indicated, and Councillor Hollingsworth supported. My wife's grandmother, her moomie's in your care, and I know you guys do an exceptional job. So we certainly appreciate the care you show for the very special people in our community. I think this is a fantastic project, and I personally support it unconditionally, and I'm sure you will get the support you require for a letter from us, and we'll get that letter for you tomorrow. So we'll call the vote. Madam Clerk, have you read the resolution?
I have not read the motion yet. It's a motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen, and Gardy. Resolves that Sault Ste. Marie City Council provide a letter of support regarding the Ontario Finnish Rest Home Association's application to the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation's Strategic Economic Infrastructure Program for their Mono Kaili Koite Enhanced Long-Term Care Home Renewal Project.
All in favor? Carried unanimously, Paul. Thanks for your time tonight. We'll get you that letter tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, guys. Have a good rest of your meeting.
And under consent, agenda item 6.17 is being pulled at the request of staff.
Okay, so 6.17, reconstruction of Angelina Avenue will be pulled. So that's not on the agenda then. We're separating that out at the request of staff. So that brings us to the consent agenda. Council, we have a lot of matters here. I'm going to start with Councillor Nero. Councillor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions for Mr. Lamming on agenda item 6.8, luxury suites?
6.8, go ahead. Mr. Lamming's on, he's on the call, so go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Lamming, I have a couple of questions regarding your report. I didn't get a chance to review the complete bylaw for the suites, the suite rental bylaw, but are the rental agreements strictly based on Greyhound games solely?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, the agreement consists of twofold. So any event that has 2,000 tickets or more that's anticipated to be sold, the suite holders have the right to purchase tickets to those events. Any Greyhound event, they must purchase at least 8 to 10 tickets, depending on the size of the suite, and there's additional tickets they can purchase also based on the size of the suite.
So it goes with the tickets for other events, but when we looked at the prorating of the rental suites, we considered it based on just the amount of Greyhound games in a season.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, that's good. The second question is, it's something that I've come across and someone has mentioned to me that there were 2 games in the remainder of last season that some rental suite holders received refunds for. Now, did everybody receive refunds, or was it a matter of whoever asked got those refunds?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, the majority of the refunds were processed immediately. There was some challenges with some credit cards that had been expired, so they're working through those remaining challenges, and there's only a handful that they're working through. Everyone will receive full refunds for those games.
Good to hear. So that's taken care of. I guess my third question is in regards to the extension payment in your report refers to the date of January the 15th. Now, I think the time that we're talking about for the tentative start date is February 4th. Is there any reason why we would request payment before that tentative time? What and instead of the date arriving, and if it gets moved again, it's just an anticipated date, then we would have to process refunds. Would it not make sense to maybe wait until February the 4th to see if that is the actual start time?
You, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, all indications that are moving forward is that the date is February 4th. In alignment with traditional payment arrangements, it typically takes place within the summer in advance of the season, so we're following the process that has been established. If something were to occur where the date got moved back till, say, the summer or later, then we'd have to revisit that. But we're proceeding as business is proceeding at this time.
Okay, and I guess we would want to know if everybody is interested and makes a commitment to those rental suites before the season actually starts.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, that is correct.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, one final question. Mr. Lamming, you note in your report as well that you touched base with some other municipal venues. Are any of those venues considering the fact that there may be COVID restrictions that come up with the number of people that are allowed in a suite? So we're using the prorated numbers based on the number of Greyhound games. But is there any consideration given at all to the number of people that are allowed in the suites?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, yes, there was consideration given this. That's why we took the prorated approach, similar to what Niagara and Guelph are doing at this time. If the league comes out and say it's at 50% capacity, say within the building as a whole and the suites, then they would only be eligible or required to purchase 50% of the tickets. So if a suite had 10 or 12 tickets, then they'd be looking at 5 or 6. So they wouldn't be impacted from that vantage point. They'd only be required to purchase whatever is recommended by the OHL in terms of percentage per capacity.
So that's considered as well. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Laming. Mr. Mayor, that's the extent of my questions.
Okay, anybody else in 6.8? So we have Gardy, then Dufour.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Laming. So, Mr. Laming, I would assume that if something were to take place that would delay or prevent the start of the season or cut it short even further, we would anticipate further amendments coming back to us. Is that correct or not necessarily?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, if there was something significant, we would absolutely come back to council for approval. If it was something minor and a start date, then we would look for approval to move forward as approach if it was a week or so or something in a short nature.
Understood. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Laming.
Councilor Dufour.
Yeah, just a clarification of a question that Councillor Nero asked Mr. Laming. So you had said that if public health requirements necessitate a lower amount of people in each suite, the suite holder would then be charged for a fewer amount of tickets, but would that change the prorated charge for the actual suite rental? Or would they still be responsible for the same suite rental regardless of how many people they could put inside of it?
Hey, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, yeah, two separate topics. Yeah, the proration would stay as presented tonight, but the tickets would change depending on what is suggested by the OHL and or approved or allotted. So if the tickets were at a lower amount, then they'd only be required to get to that percentage, similar to what would be based in the building as a whole.
Okay, do you know of any other municipalities that are allowing a proration based on the suite capacity as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, yes, as stated, Niagara and Guelph are proceeding in this fashion. We're taking more of a proactive approach, and others are also considering taking this approach as well.
Oh, okay, so are the others prorating based on capacity of the suite, or are they also just basing it on a proration of the number of games?
They are proceeding on a number of games. We're reducing from 34 home games to 20 home games, and we prorated accordingly.
Okay, so we don't know that anyone has been prorating a rental fee based on the public health allowances for capacity because we don't know that information yet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, do I have anybody else in 6.8? Seeing none, Councillor Nero, do you have any other matters?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Nero's done his consent matters. Councillor Gardy, you have matters for consent?
I do 6.5 to start, Mr. Mayor, please. Just a question for Mr. Ver.
Okay, 6.5, so that is the
the Algoma University City Studios.
Mr. Bear's on the phone. Go ahead, Mr. Bear. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Gardy.
Yeah, thanks. Mr. Ver, I just think it's a cool project, a cool concept, and I was hoping that you would be able to provide some highlights for the public, if you could, about this city studio concept.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, I'm happy to. Yes, the City Studio program is one that's been implemented in other communities across Canada. And what it does is involve university students in helping to research, come up with ideas, and solve community problems. So the proposal from Algoma University will see the city engage with Algoma University, the professors and the students to establish research topics that they will engage in and then present at the end of their term to city staff. And it provides an opportunity for us to engage with youth in the community and take advantage of their skills and expertise to try and come up with new ways to help advance Sault Ste. Marie.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's a really innovative project by the university, and it it works to further that relationship that Tom or Mr. Ver was speaking of between the community and the university. And it's a key driver for economic development. These types of partnerships and student participants in the project will, I'd say, by their very work, they'd develop a greater sense of pride in the Sioux and ownership in the future of the community, and hopefully decide to want to stay here beyond university. So I think it's a great project. Thanks, Tom, for highlighting it for us.
Agree with that. Councillor Hollingsworth, you had your hand up, so we'll go to you. Is it on 6.5?
Yes, it is. Just a positive comment.
Yep.
I echo those. I know that Goma University has done the business competition, case competition events before, and they were very successful, where other universities and so forth were invited to the SU and they presented. I'm just want to say well done. I'm excited about them moving forward with this idea. And I wonder if Councillor Hilsinger had anything to do with this, because she was also very involved before at the business competition. So well done at Goma University, and for all those people that are involved with this. And I was hoping that something like this would happen, and it is. Well done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on 6.5? Councillor Christian.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. Vare on this. First of all, yeah, I echo those comments 100%. As a teacher, I support any endeavor that looks at these opportunities for education. My question to Mr. Vare, though, do you have any examples of success stories in other communities to give people an idea of what we may expect from these projects?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. Yes, we've looked at a number of the other communities that have been engaged in the City Studio program. I think Hamilton had some great examples where their students got involved in projects like how do we create a more welcoming community for newcomers. They looked at how can we improve our local farmers market. They looked at ways to better market the community to attract people there. So those types of community advancement initiatives have been the types of projects we've seen in other cities that we think have direct applicability to Sault Ste. Marie.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of moving forward, will the request come to us again next year, or by approving this tonight, we're agreeing to the funding for the next 3 years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, yes, this would be for a 3-year project for the City Studio initiative.
Okay, one final question on this. Is it the city or the staff or faculty at the post-secondary, do they evaluate the success of the program? What would they use as a measuring tool to determine? Is it simply going to be the projects or outcomes from the work that the students do? Will there be, outcomes that have practical applications? How does this normally work in terms of measuring the success beyond the obvious benefits of getting students involved?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, that's a good question. I think a combination of those factors. One of the key things for us will be looking at those ideas that actually take root and move into implementation in the community. I think that would be a key thing for us to look at the effectiveness of the program. Beyond that, though, you're right. This is an opportunity for the city to engage with youth at Algoma University. It exposes them to all kinds of activities and initiatives going on in their community as well, and get them involved in Sault Ste. Marie and the community building projects that we have underway. So I think from that perspective, we see a lot of benefits to the program.
And I would agree with you 100%. I mean, if we're going to grow as a community, we need as many people engaged as possible. And this is a great vehicle to get young people through this program involved and buy into what we're trying to do. And more importantly, provide some real benefit to us. So I look forward to this as well. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else in 6.5? Seeing none, Councillor Gardy, do you have any other matters on consent?
You know what I do, Mr. Mayor, and if you'll indulge me, I just think there's a lot of good things in this consent agenda that the public should know more about. So that's going to be my effort over the next 2. The 6.7 CNIB transit accessibility pilot.
Go ahead.
So I just want to say up front, before just asking for some more details for the public, that this is awesome work, and staff The city and CNIB should be commended for it. It's a big step to making our community more accessible for many of its citizens and many of its visitors. So through you, Mr. Mayor, again, if I could go to, I guess, Mr. Lamming potentially on this one, could you just let the public know about this fine work?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Gardy, yes, we're very excited to have this partnership, not only with the CNIB, but we've also engaged our accessibility committee in this process as well, which they've also provided a letter of support. So looking forward to introduce new type of technology as a pilot project moving forward to introduce ways using technology through an app to allow people that are visually impaired to utilize transit in a more efficient way. That also potentially might allow them to, instead of using a pair bus type transit, to use the traditional transit service. And we're looking forward to seeing how this rolls out. And with the engagement and use in our community, we are told by our partner CNIB that there are a number of applications out there that could work for this within a reasonable amount that was suggested within the report. And we're happy to RFP this and look forward to seeing the responses come forward, and then with ultimately being able to roll this out.
Thank you.
Anybody else on 6.7? So seeing nobody on that, that is very good work. We certainly appreciate the staff's effort there, and it's important. Councillor Gardy, you said you had another one?
I got one more, 6.18, please, Mr. Mayor.
6.18. I think there's a few people that want to speak to this one. Yeah, go ahead. Bellevue Park Greenhouse Pilot Project. It's a great,
Sure.
great piece of work.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I don't know if Ms. Beach is on the line or Mr. Girardi, but to the staff at the greenhouse, I just wanted to extend a thank you personally to everybody there for their idea and their effort and the resources that they provided to food security in the Sioux. And hopefully this will be able to be an annual effort potentially. And you know what? It's also demonstrable evidence of the opportunity in the agriculture and agri-food space, even in our climate and location. And hopefully there might be some visionary entrepreneurs taking notice of this. So I just wanted to say another great thing on the agenda. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Any other comments on 6.18? Councillor Dufour, go ahead, please, and then Councillor Bezoal.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, again, also wanted to offer my thanks to Mr. Girardi, Ms. Beach, and also to Mr. Marshall, who I know we had some chats in the farmers market earlier this spring about how great of an idea this would be, and it's really nice to see it come to fruition. I also just wanted to, point out to the public that one of the ways that we're able to do a great project like this is because we have a great organization, Harvest Algoma, here in Sault Ste. Marie, and it's one that that was supported by the city through the DSAB in order to get started and to provide much needed food service to our food banks in our community. And it's great to see the city also partnering in that effort. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here. So thanks very much, guys.
Councillor Bezoal.
Yeah. Similar sentiments. It was very interesting. I had a graduate student ask me quite a few questions last week for a position paper on how the city can get in agriculture. And I said, it is happening. And that the agriculture movement, I think you take a look at RAIN and Harvest Algoma and Seeds for Change and what they're doing at Jardin Farms and Thompson Farms. And there's actually more than I need to list. So I think I'm really happy, Larry and Susan. I think it's super innovative, really good use of space, and something I totally support growing and I look forward to more initiatives that you bring forward in terms of growing food for our community, and thanks.
Okay, Councillor Bezoal. Anybody else in 6.18? Seeing none, that's the extent of your matters, Councillor Gardy. So the next on my list is Councillor Bezoal and then Councillor Bruni after Councillor Bezoal. So Councillor Bezoal, you had some items.
Thank you. I just have one item, Mr. Mayor, 6.19, the winter preparedness. Just a few questions for Ms. Hamilton Beach.
Go ahead.
I think I would just like you to just reiterate for people at home, Ms. Hamilton Beach, mainly the sidewalk priorities in terms of the priority 2 sidewalks. I know that we have a lot of students that walk to Clerg at the top of Pine, as well with Queen E. We have students that are walking down Queen Street to get to the university. So if you could just explain how the priority 1 sidewalks, which those are listed in yellow on your map that people, versus the red priority 1 that are downtown, and how they how that's going to work out for you in the winter preparedness schedule.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen. It is certainly our intention and again, planned preparedness that we would take care of the downtown core as the #1 priority to assure that all businesses and access is available. But then by all means, we would be hoping to keep all major arteries and those priority 1s and quite honestly, the 2s. We would just progress into those logically and in a methodical order.
And Ms. Hamilton Beach, so what time, like if we had a winter event overnight, would you foresee the sidewalks getting plowed in time for people to get to work, to get to school, depending upon your workforce? And I know you may have some restrictions due to social distancing with COVID. So how do you plan to tackle that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council Vezo-Allen. Our sidewalk crews come out at 4:30 a.m. That would certainly be the planned continued practice. It would be a matter of shortage that would then see that interruption. And we certainly would see communication of any of those interruptions as best as possible as we proceed down that path.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hamilton Beach, for you and what your team are doing at Public Works. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, on that same matter, I have Councillor Bruni. Councillor Bruni, you wanted to speak to 6.19?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And question to Ms. Hamilton Beach regarding the winter preparedness. So the level of service, really the level of service will not be reduced. I mean, in Northern Ontario, we probably provide the best winter snow removal program that I know of. We spend probably the most money on it, and our service within 8 hours, especially on the night shift, basically the whole city, the roads are all plowed. But so is the level of service going to be reduced?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. This report was strictly to hopefully have that community rest assured that thought is being given. Should an outbreak happen within our actual workforce, we will have to obviously prioritize our effort. If we begin, and as the mayor opened up this meeting with numbers and absences the way they are currently, which we are in great shape, you will see no reduction in a level of service. That's certainly the intent of the department, and that's all the prepared and precautions that have been taken that are outlined here will hopefully keep us in healthy shape.
To Ms. Hamilton Beach, if the level of service is reduced due to COVID-19, there will be communication out there for the residents to be aware of.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, absolutely. Yes, we would certainly see an extreme weather event as well as absences, and that will be relayed through media releases and our typical methods.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else in 6.19? Seeing nobody. Councillor Vezo-Allen, was that the extent of your matters? Okay. Councillor Bruni, you were next on my list.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Christian, you're after Councillor Bruni. I see you. Councillor Bruni, you're the next on my list.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to Ms. Hamilton Beach regarding the 6.20 winter maintenance, declaring a significant event. Can you please maybe elaborate on this for the viewers and for everybody else?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. This report has been prepared in light of changes to the minimum maintenance standards. And I guess I will call it an opportunity that they have provided, which in fact would then alert the community that a significant event is either being experienced or being forecasted. And that then allows us to announce to the community that the roads may become within a state of repair. Again, it's not our intention to change our response, but the community should be aware with this type of announcement to take extra care when traveling the roads. And it would then put our legal team and our liabilities in a state of lesser of less exposure, and provide us with the opportunity to then respond more carefully to the event, or as the event is weaning.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, anybody else in 6.20? Seeing none, Councillor Christian, Councillor Bruni, do you have any more matters on consent?
No, I don't.
Okay, Councillor Christian, we're at you.
Thank you, sir. 6.13, cost recovery for fire services. If the chief is present.
You have the chief. Go ahead, Councillor Christian.
Thank you. So first of all, Chief, thanks for the report. I think this is a good idea. We're always looking for ways to find revenue streams. A couple of questions though. Just for clarification, you had mentioned in your report that there were a couple of ways to cost recover, one of them being false alarms. With your investigation, do other cost recovery programs cost recover for a first false alarm? In other words, somebody, I could see repeat offenders, but do we do this for the intent for the first false alarm?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, through our research, we typically didn't see many municipalities charge on the first alarm. That was kind of the switch where it activated the process.
Okay, good. That would make good sense. One other question regarding that. In your investigation, did you see a trend in terms of long-term revenue as far as this project or process would work? It would seem to me that as people catch on, there may be less tendency to call or be more prudent about the things that would otherwise get them charged for cost recovery. Do we see a drop in revenue over time?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Christian, the only thing that we saw a drop in revenue was because it acts as a deterrent, and typically it forced the individuals to fix the problems that they had that caused the false alarm. Most municipalities, they did not see a decline in the revenue, and well, to your point, like no one didn't call because they were in fear of getting a charge. But overall, we should see a decline in the revenue because people will actually make their systems work properly.
Yeah, and that on 6.13.
Okay, so anybody else in 6.13? See, Councillor Christian, Councillor Shoemaker on 6.13.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, Mr. Mayor, that this was a report Councillor Christian and I had asked for a couple of years ago. It was brought forward and now it's being expanded on. So glad to see it seems to be working, and that we're recovering where possible for some of these costs, which we know can be extensive. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else in 6.13? Councillor Christian, you have another matter?
Yeah, 6.1, it's my final item. Thank you. So I'm not sure who to direct these questions to, because I know there was a committee involved.
So ask the question. So we're on parking violence enforcement. The CEO will take the question or direct it as the CEO sees fit.
Thank you. Thank you. So first of all, I do want to thank the committee for the work they do and appreciate the process that we have to follow. I have two questions. One of them is, how many factors are considered for this particular proposal? Like, I know that there's a process to look at various factors, and I know we might not be privy to the actual items, but how many things are considered?
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, on this particular RFP, there were 4 general areas considered. Certainly cost is one of, and fee structure are one of the areas. Experience and references for the proponents. Their overall solution and how they propose to meet our needs are considered, and their compliance with our requirements. You're on mute, Councillor Christian.
Councillor Christian, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I lost a little bit of connectivity there. I apologize. Can you tell me whether that the winner of this bid was the lowest bid?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, while I do have to be careful on all the information we put forth, I can state to you that the proponent that's recommended to you was not the lowest bid.
Okay, thank you very much. And I appreciate your position there. I just want to make a quick comment and then I'll leave this issue. I know that all of council received correspondence. And I know we strike a balance through these types of these processes to ensure that we're getting the best bang for our dollar for the community. But I also recognize that we got to do our best to try to support local business. And the only thing I would suggest is perhaps we could look at other municipalities in the future to see if they have ideas of how they could better incorporate that consideration where you have local businesses bidding for projects. I'm not suggesting that our method is not good. I'm simply saying that in light of everything that's occurred, perhaps we could look at this to see if we could perhaps improve on it. Thank you.
Okay, so I have Councillor Shoemaker, then Councillor Dufour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following up on Councillor Christian's remarks there. Through you to Mr. White, we did, I think it was Councillor Christian and I last year did bring a motion on revising our purchasing policy to include some additional factors. And do you know what the status of that is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, the purchasing bylaw and purchasing process are due for a complete and comprehensive review this upcoming year in 2021. That's certainly where your and Councillor Christian's motion that was passed some time ago will be assessed as to whether it can be incorporated. And we will look at all areas of our purchasing bylaw and process at that time.
Okay, thanks, Mr. White. I'll note somewhat along the same lines of what Councillor Christian was saying, that we did all get correspondence from a local company that put in a bid on this and noted their direct investment in the community would more than offset the price difference. And I tend to see the point there. And my issue in this case, I would say, Mr. Mayor, is that there were competing local companies. So if we get into weighing the bid of one local company against the bid of another local company, we're going to get into the subjective exercise we're trying to avoid through our purchasing policy. So I think that in this case, the objective analysis, unfortunately, has led to this contract going out of town. I obviously wished that wasn't the case, but we have these processes in place so that we don't get into the subjectivity of who's paying more taxes in town, who's hiring more employees, and avoiding that situation where we're not necessarily comparing apples and oranges.
Important point, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My question is for Mr. White or Mr. Lamming. Does the signing of this contract for the term listed preclude council's ability to either change the level of service that's covered by this RFP or to marry it with other RFPs that may be coming in the future as we evaluate things like downtown safety and third-party bylaw enforcement.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, I'll defer this question to Mr. Lamming.
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour. Within the contract, we do have a 60-day termination clause if it would be the will of council to go that fashion. We also, as an example, this past summer when parking enforcement was not to full capacity, we did communicate with the existing proponent, and they reduced from 5 commissionaires to 2 to work with the city as that happened. So they were good to work with in that regard. So hopefully that provides some perspective on both accounts.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Mr. Laming.
I have Councillor Vezo-Allen on 6.1 also.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a comment. I already directed my questions to Mr. Lamming this morning via phone call, and I just want to reiterate that staff did use proper policy and procedures with this procurement process, and we did have 2 local companies that did respond. However, through the 3 people that were on the review committee during the process of looking at the value solution and the fee structure, the references, and also the compliance to requirements, they made the choice, and I support staff. We give them the power to do so, and I have faith in what they did. And I certainly understand with having 2 local companies that did not get the bid, that is a disappointment. So in looking at the procurement processes moving forward to 2021, that's something that we could look forward to. But I'm proud that we had a very transparent and thoughtful process, and I support the decision of staff on the awarding of this contract. So thank you.
Are there any other questions on 6.1? Seeing none. Councillor Christian, do you have any other matters on the consent agenda?
No,
Councillor
sir, I'm
Christian?
done. Thank you.
Councillor Christian does not have any other matters on the consent agenda. Do I have any other councillors with matters on the consent agenda? Madam Clerk, that looks like it is it for consent. I just want to end by reiterating a comment Councillor Gardy made. There were a lot of really good things on here this week, and I was happy to see it. And I think it was just the culmination of a lot of good work. And I want to thank the staff for that work. And I want to thank council for its leadership in getting some of these initiatives moving and supporting them. So Madam Clerk, we could read the motion on the consent agenda and then move on.
I have a motion by Councillors Vezo-Allen and Gardy. Resolved that all the items listed under date November 30, 2020, agenda item 6, consent agenda, save and accept agenda item 6.17 be approved as recommended.
All in favor? That's carried. Madam Clerk, before we proceed, I just want clarification from the CAO. We are going to finish the regular agenda before we get into the budget presentation, Mr. CAO. I'm correct in that respect?
That's correct.
Okay. So that brings us, Madam Clerk, to 7.1.1.
7.1.1, which is the 2021-2023 Corporate Strategic Plan. And there's a motion by Councillors Dufour and Gardy. Resolved that the report of the CAO dated November 30, 2020 concerning the 2020 to 2023 Corporate Strategic Plan be received, and that Council approve the plan as presented.
Mr. CAO, I'm going to start with you on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Obviously, as council's aware, we had begun working on the plan and had a very successful council senior management team workshop session just prior to the pandemic. Unfortunately, in dealing with the pandemic, the preparatory work and the completion of developing the complete plan for you was delayed. It is now put before you. Certainly, if you remember back to that session, our discussion centered around how much work had been done in the previous plan to kind of position the corporation and a lot of areas of the community in changing structure. As you know, we changed the structure of council, we changed the structure of senior management with the city. We did a number of studies, had a number of a certain amount of expertise brought in, certainly with the downtown revitalization. And we had really good alignment with the community working through the future SSM initiative so that we could be aligned totally where with the community wanted to go. The framework of the previous plan really is beneficial to moving ahead with the new plan. Council did, during the discussions in our workshop process, do some small tinkering with some of the focus area wording and adding a sub-focus area of the environment. But all in all, the framework is relevant for an evolving plan which looks at the work we did with restructuring and getting a lot of independent expertise to provide a path forward for us. In the next few years, it's more a matter of actually getting the job done and getting these projects and initiatives done and getting further along the path to address our focus areas and get closer to the vision which we've set for ourselves. A couple of things of note with the plan. Specifically the time frame for the plan 2020 to 2023. Obviously, while it's very late in 2020 and we're just approving the plan now, we did a lot of work through this previous year, even with the pandemic, to accomplish matters in the plan, especially with our capital transportation plan and our other capital items. So we were very fortunate to be able to keep on that path and get that work accomplished. As far as going for 2023, obviously you have a new election, a new municipal election, which will occur late in 2022. As you head into 2023, as council's aware, you will at least have a new mayor. And in 2023, you will likely be going through a new CAO selection process. So you will want to get the new council acclimatized to the governance role, and you will certainly want to have a new CAO selected and on tap before you then prepare a future plan. So that is why the overall time frame of the plan is set as it is. One final thing I'd like to note is we certainly see a more engaged process with council and staff as far as accomplishing things under the plan. So it is recommended that I report back to council on a quarterly basis. We would do it at the same meeting where we have the quarterly financials brought forth for you for discussion. And to assist with that, we are preparing a companion document to the plan, which will set out what the activities are under the plan in more detail, especially with a timeline associated with them, and especially where there's council decision points associated with something. So if we look at a project like the Twin Pad Arena, obviously that's not just one council's decision, it's a series of council decisions. We would map that out in this document to show you when those points would be intersecting with you for decisions and generally which quarter we would expect those to occur in. That's all I need to go over for council right now, and I'm happy to answer any questions on it.
Okay, so we're open to questions here. I don't have anybody currently on my list. So questions of the CAO on the corporate strategic plan. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. White, you mentioned a timeline appendix, if you can call it that, associated with the plan. When might we be seeing that? I know there was some draft, rough draft of that at the strategic planning session we had in February or January. I can't remember when it was exactly, but it'd be good to know, where we're at in terms of where we've come in the last 8 or 10 months.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, it's very close to being released to you. I think if we just get through the budget, we may have it for December 14th. If not, we'll definitely have it for the first meeting in January.
Okay, and thanks for the strategic plan. Looks good, and hopefully we can, like you said, finish off some of the good work that was started last term and that we've been continuing this term.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Hey, Council, I'm looking for any other councillors that want to make comments or have questions about the strategic plan. Seeing none, we could vote on the motion. Madam Clerk has loaded it. So all in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Council. Just enter your votes. The clerk will indicate when she's got them all recorded.
I have a procedural question, Mr. Mayor.
Sure, go ahead, Councillor Shoemaker.
We pulled something from consent, Angeline Avenue.
We accepted it, 6.17, yeah.
Right.
We didn't pull it to discuss it.
Oh.
The staff asked to pull it right off the agenda.
Okay, thank you. That was my misunderstanding.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, under agenda item 7.3.1, Community Development Fund, I have a motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen, and Gardy. Resolved that the report of the Deputy CAO, Community Development and Enterprise Services, dated November 30, 2020, concerning creation of a Community Development Fund be received, and that the workflow and criteria as presented in attachments A to E for the various components of the Community Development Fund be approved. Further, that Council permit a delegation of authority to enable the Deputy CAO, Community Development and Enterprise Services, or his or her designate, to sign Community Development Fund agreements for contributions approved by City Council.
Okay, so Mr. Ver is on the line. Mr. Ver, before I go to Council for questions or comments, did you want the opportunity to say a few words?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just as a high-level overview, we were to Council a while back and presented this framework for the Community Development Fund. Excuse me. Part of the goal was really to look at how we could streamline the process for the funding that the city provides, how we could have better impact for those funds that we're expending, how we could also better align with the pillars of the future SSM strategy. And as you'll see in the revised workflow that we've put together for these different funding programs, how we also work with the organizations with expertise or the boards with expertise in the different areas. So the EDC board, the Tourism Board, Cultural Vitality Committee, a Municipal Heritage Committee, Social Equity Committee, and the Environmental Sustainability Committee. Appreciate all the work of all the staff that has gone into helping develop the criteria for the various programs and work with our different organizational boards to come up with this process. We've got, I think, a balanced approach here in terms of how we're expending these funds in the community, and then how we look at in specific detail our economic development program, our arts and culture assistance program, the green initiatives program, and the social equity program. I'll leave it there, and I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Okay, I have a list going here. Councillor Shoemaker and then Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification on Mr. Ver's report, the Conferences and Special Events Fund, which was 20,000, does this in essence collapse that committee? There was a committee, the Conferences and Major Special Events Committee, that would consider proposals. Does it now all come sort of vetted through the staff channels and then come to Council for approval?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, that's correct.
Okay, that's great. I think that's a better way of doing it. So appreciate that. And thanks for the good work on the report.
Councillor Bruni.
Thank you. To Mr. Ver, the 1.5 million that is allocated to this fund, will it come to Council every time that you're going to be providing money to these areas here? For instance, the Green Committee, the 50,000, Conference Special Events 20,000. So would you come to Council for approval, or is this basically the approval will just be strictly from yourself?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. Those applications will still come to council. We will have the recommendations of the various committees or boards for the applications, but the final approval will come to council. And then the delegation of authority is once council's approved, it's really that we are able to assign the agreements with those different organizations for the approved projects.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else in 7.3.1? I would like to just recognize that I think this is a really good and important piece of work. You know, we've looked at all these funds that council, you know, approves over the years and allocates resources from. We've had a good look at how they're functioning, aligning them to our community plan, and putting a process in place that is, you know, less bureaucratic and more focused on achieving some positive ends for our community. So I think this is a good piece of administrative work, and I think staff should be recognized for it. So thank you. I don't see any more hands on this, so we could have the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Approved unanimously. And that brings us to section 8, I think, Madam Clerk. Once you have the vote counted there.
Yep, that will bring us to agenda item 8.1, walking trails. This is a motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Christian, whereas many Sault Ste. Marie residents travel to warmer climates during the winter months in order to escape the cold weather and be able to maintain a healthy, active outdoor lifestyle. And whereas the COVID-19 travel restrictions on border crossings and requirements to quarantine on return to Canada have resulted in many snowbirds' travel plans being disrupted this coming winter. And whereas it is in the city's interest to encourage and promote healthy outdoor lifestyles for all of its residents and to offer exceptional services in these exceptional times. Now therefore be it resolved that council authorize staff to allocate $33,500 from the winter maintenance reserve in order to create safe, maintained walking trails at Strathclair Park and at Elliott Park, in addition to those already in place at Clergue Park and Bellevue Park, for the enjoyment of all Sioux residents this winter on a one-time basis.
Okay, Councillor Shoemaker, I'm going to come to you first, seeing as it's your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a result of a number of requests I've had for, you know, additional recreational activity this winter, given that the border's closed and many folks aren't going to be traveling south for the in the cold weather. A lot of them have asked if we could plow the Hub Trail. I've talked to Mr. Girardi about that option and discussed the pitfalls of that. And he and I suppose, bandied around a few ideas and thought that some walking trails in the west and the east end would be a good compromise to provide additional leisure activity in the cold weather. The amount allocated, the $33,500, is for additional blowers or blower and fuel for the maintenance of those trails. And the blower, if it is purchased, certainly will not go to waste. I know Mr. Girardi is always desperate to come into council for equipment. So I know that even if we only do these walking paths this year, the blower is not a one-off expense. It's a yearly item that can be reused and reused on an ongoing basis. There are great walking trails. I often walk down at Bellevue Park in the winter, and the walking trails are well attended. Clergue Park, around the loop around the skating trail, is also very well used. And so adding some capacity in the west end at Tom Tipton and in the east end at Strathclair, I think provides more options for people if there's going to be more of them out and about in the winter.
Councillor Christian, did you want to add to that as a seconder of the motion?
No, I think Councillor Shoemaker's covered it off quite nicely.
Okay, any questions from councillors? We have a few here, so we'll start a list. Councillor Hilsinger, Councillor Hollingsworth, and then Councillor Bruni. So Councillor Hilsinger, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really more so have a comment. This is an idea that we've been talking about various different people in the community long before I got elected, that, you know, what can we do more to help people enjoy winter we're faced with it 4 to 6 months out of the year, so we may as well get out and enjoy it. And this is a way that, unfortunately, perhaps crisis has created opportunity here, and we'll understand that this will be something that we'll want to carry on in future years, and we will make it a priority and try and find the money to support it, because it's what our community deserves. They deserve safe places to walk and recreate that are part of their tax dollars that they are already contributing. And thank you to Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Christian for bringing this forward at this time. I really look forward to seeing how it works.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Sorry, I had to come off mute. Just clarification. So I understand that there was discussion about not clearing the hub trail, which is understandable, it's quite large. But just clarification, is there any portion of the hub trail that might be cleared? For example, Finn Hill is popular for tobogganing, and a lot of parents will go and have their kids toboggan, especially when they're older, and the parents may just want to go for a short walk along just that portion of the hubs trail, and it's already being walked on, and it's already being walked on in the winter because the cars are parked there. And I see the parents saying to their young kids, go in toboggan, we're just going to go for a short little walk. So is there potentially one portion of the hub trail that could be maintained, such as around Finn Hill?
I'm assuming through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm assuming the question is coming towards me. It is not our intention to actually maintain that trail. It is a trail. We need to maintain them and keep them as trails, especially from a liability perspective. And also, I know there are people walking on the trail, but there's also those who like to use their cross-country skis and they like to use their snowshoes. So they don't really want us keeping those trails open. So there may be a request for it, but that's why we're going to add more walking trails in areas of Strathclyde Farm. As Councillor Shoemaker had mentioned, we're going to look at putting 2 kilometers there, 1 kilometer at Elliott Park. And if we can enhance and put a few more, a little more walking space over at the Bellevue Park, we'll do that too. But I really don't want to get into starting to open up the hub trail. A hub trail is what it is, and it's used by many different people. So I don't want to get into starting to clean it out because it becomes very problematic to maintain. There could be ice issues. There could be many other things. It wasn't designed. It wasn't built to be used as a sidewalk. Its main use is a hub trail. So I prefer to stay that way.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. It's just that I know that portion, a lot of people do walk that portion, and that's the question I would been receiving. So thank you for that clarification.
Hey, Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Girardi, the 33,500, is that for a new blower or is that for manpower?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, what we looked at when Councillor Shoemaker came to me and we figured out what we can do and how we could do it, we have a John Deere tractor that has a blower on it now. We have a second John Deere tractor that doesn't have a blower. So all we're going to do to be able to accomplish this with my existing complement of staff is just add another blower onto the existing tractor. So it's not buying a big blower like you see in the streets. That would probably cost us $750,000. This is just a small blower that'll go on the back of a large tractor, garden tractor. And so that'd be about $25,000. The other $8,500 is for the fuel and maintenance of that blower.
Okay. For Tom Tipton, where would you put the 1 kilometer trail?
I actually had Travis Reed view that site and go through the site and pick out the area that it was going to be. I haven't mapped it out myself, but he's very confident that we'll be able to put something that'll be very reasonable and easy to walk through and entertaining at the same time, right? Because just having something completely flat and not showing you anything isn't going to be entertaining for people. So we're trying to give you something that meanders a little bit and kind of gives you a nice feeling when you're walking through the trail.
Okay. So manpower is not included in this cost here.
We're using our existing manpower because they have to go to these sites anyway. It's going to take a little bit longer at that site, but it's not going to be adding anything onto that we don't think we can already manage with our existing crew. This is a 1-year trial. We're doing it to try and get through this 1 year. So we don't feel it necessary to go ahead and hire another person and put the cost of another person in on a 1-year pilot project. If we're looking at doing something permanent and we're going to be enhancing this even more, then we're going to have to come back to you and see what we need for to make this permanent. But right now, the way it is, that's what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you very much. Good project.
Yep.
Yeah, anybody else on that motion? So we can have a vote on the motion then. All in favor of the motion? The motion's carried. Madam Clerk will let us know if she needs any of you to indicate for her records.
That will take us to agenda item 8.2, derelict properties. A motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Christian, whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie has used the tools at its disposal to attempt to beautify neighbourhoods throughout the city through measures such as enhanced bylaw enforcement, community improvement plans for vacant buildings, and targeted investments in downtown improvement. And whereas there remain a number of derelict or unsafe or abandoned properties in the City of Sault Ste. Marie which detract from the efforts that have been made to beautify neighbourhoods. And whereas it is in the interest of the City of Sault Ste. Marie to have occupied and vibrant neighbourhoods without derelict or unsafe or abandoned properties within those neighbourhoods. Now therefore be it resolved that staff be requested to investigate programs that exist throughout municipalities in Ontario to incentivize or provide assistance in the demolition of these derelict or unsafe or abandoned properties and propose a comprehensive plan to City Council for implementation.
Councillor Shoemaker, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're coming at this problem in a number of different ways. We've got the committee that Councillor Dufour and Mr. Elliott are on. The name escapes me at the moment, with respect to vacant property bylaw enforcement. We've got Councillor Dufour and I proposed a community improvement plan to renovate or improve vacant properties. And this, I think, is probably a last resort in terms of options available to us on the menu of things we can do to get rid of these places, to tear them down. So I want to see what other across Ontario are doing to determine whether or not there is a program that could be in place, whether it's through the Community Development Fund or whether it has Public Works involved in the demolition of these things. I don't know what the answer is, but that's why I'm looking for staff to see what other communities are doing across Ontario to see if we can help clean up our downtown. I know I often drive one stretch of a road downtown, and in a 1 square block, there's 4 boarded up properties. So I think that there is a need to tackle this problem. It seems to be getting worse, unfortunately, and hopefully we can spur some redevelopment, if nothing else, by creating some vacant lots on which new housing stock can be established. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Christian, you're the seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I agree with everything Councillor Shoemaker is saying. We are tackling this at multiple levels in the community. I'm all for always looking at other methods or ideas that we can employ. So if it's an opportunity for us to reach out, look at best practices or other incentives that other municipalities are using or have access to, I think it only helps our situation. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Councillor Vezo-Allen, who's sent me a message saying she had questions. Councillor Vezo-Allen.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to whomever can answer this. So back last year, we started the bylaw enforcement task force, of which there was Councillor Dufour, myself, and Councillor Nero, as well as staff, fire, police, social services, a variety of people around the table, which then developed into the Integrated Municipal Enforcement Team, the IMET. So I'm trying to understand what this resolution represents, because from what I'm reading, it is what we were doing with the IMET. And in terms of demolition, and I know Councillor Dufour can, is the DSAB does have a demolition budget. So while I certainly appreciate the motion coming forth and the difficulty with derelict buildings and absentee landlords and the variety of other issues that surround us in terms of properties that may not be desirable, I think this work is already happening. So I'm just trying to understand the nuance of what this resolution will do in sort of creating solutions for derelict properties.
So we'll let Councillor Shoemaker speak to that. My understanding, Councillor Bezo, in my discussions with Councillor Shoemaker, is he was trying to determine whether the city had a mechanism to help take down derelict properties, to actually get them down. And if they didn't have a mechanism to do that, what other municipalities were doing that we could look at. And I think I agree with the suggestion that IMET would be doing a lot of the good work that would lead to the end of this process. Do we have the process completed by having a function where we could get the property down? I think that's what Councillor Shoemaker was trying to get at. So Councillor Shoemaker, you could answer that for yourself, and then maybe we could have the CEO chime in. And I know Councillor Dufour is on my list, and he might have something to offer too.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think you captured it correctly. IMET will go in and enforce when there are substantial property standards or other fire-related or criminal activity issues with a building. But then after that, the next step after that is trying to, either brighten up the building through the community improvement plan that's been proposed, or take it down. And I don't think that step is involved in IMET and its current iteration. We can't just say, okay, we've enforced, we've gotten the bad tenants out, or we've got, gotten a bunch of orders against the property in terms of bylaw enforcement. Now what? Well, now what is what I'm trying to get answered through this. Can we get the building down? Or can we take it for, for any other reason, or if someone else in the community wants to buy it, like a private landlord, is there some assistance the city can offer in refurbishing or demolishing the property? So I think it, like you say, is the step after IMET enforcement that this is trying to achieve.
Mr. CEO, do you have anything kind of this is a council motion, so it's not something that's driven from staff, but do you have anything to offer?
Just to say, I do understand what Councillor Shoemaker is trying to achieve with it and how you explained it. It would involve, if passed, us examining what, if any, other programs are there in other municipalities, and we would have to bring a report back on that for council's eventual consideration, and whether we, based on that, can propose a comprehensive plan.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Councillor Dufour now. Councillor Dufour, you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I support this motion. I think that any way that that the city can be involved in producing a comprehensive plan or looking at other best practices is great. It's obviously something that myself and the DSAB board have been doing for some time now. As Councillor Shoemaker said, the question of now what has been often on our minds, which is why we have appropriated funds for the demolition of buildings. The easiest, quickest, most legal way to go about that after IMET enforcement is for the Housing Corporation to actually purchase the property, take down the building, and then hold that land kind of in like almost a municipal land bank in order to either sell that property to an interested private developer, or to vest it with Habitat, as we did on Wellington Street West, or to build on it ourselves as we look to diversify our asset mix. So, you know, we also have the ability through the low-income home ownership program to take buildings that maybe are in contravention of the bylaws but can still be repurposed. We're able to take them into that program and repurpose them as well. So there's a lot going on in this space, but I support the motion. I think it's great that we can tie city staff into this more. And I just wanted to encourage city staff as they prepare a report for this motion to just touch base with our partners at the DSAB and at the Housing Corporation to just have a conversation about what we're currently doing and some of the barriers which are real, which we have run into, which I know the building department within the city has done a lot of work to try and help us through. And so on behalf of the DSAB, I wanted to express my appreciation to the building department, and I'm sure they'll be a valuable resource for staff as they look to procure this report.
Councillor Vezo-Allen, does that address your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Shoemaker?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think just further to Councillor Dufour's comment, it doesn't say it expressly in here, but obviously asking staff to work with other agencies with similar objectives like the DSAB. Perhaps it goes without saying, but I'll ask Mr. White to confirm that he will in fact reach out and see what partnerships can be formed there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, I'm just writing the note as you speak. We will address it in our follow-up conversations at senior management tomorrow.
Okay, so all in favor of the motion? The motion is carried. Madam Clerk, you'll let us know when you've got everybody's votes recorded.
I do, and agenda item 8.3, changes to Conservation Authorities Act. This motion appeared on the addendum issued today. It's a motion by Councillors Bruni and Gardy, whereas the province has introduced Bill 229, Protect, Support and Recover from COVID-19 Act, Schedule 6, Conservation Authorities Act. And whereas the legislation introduces a number of changes and new sections that could remove and or significantly hinder the Conservation Authority's role in regulating development, permit appeal process, and engaging in review and appeal of planning applications. And whereas we rely on the watershed expertise provided by local conservation authorities to protect residents, property, and local natural resources on a watershed basis by regulating development and engaging in reviews of applications submitted under the Planning Act. And whereas the changes allow the minister to make decisions without Conservation Authority's watershed data and expertise. And whereas the legislation suggests that the minister will have the ability to establish standards and requirements for non-mandatory programs which are negotiated between the conservation authorities and municipalities to meet local watershed needs. And whereas municipalities believe that the appointment of municipal representatives on Conservation Authority boards should be a municipal decision, and the chair and vice chair of the Conservation Authority board should be duly elected. And whereas the changes to the duty of members contradicts the fiduciary duty of a Conservation Authority board member to represent the best interests of the Conservation Authority and its responsibility to the watershed. And whereas conservation authorities have already been working with the province, development sector, and municipalities to streamline and speed up permitting and planning approvals through Conservation Ontario's Client Service and Streamlining Initiative. And whereas changes to the legislation will create more red tape and costs for the conservation authorities and their municipal partners, and potentially result in delays in the development approval process. And whereas municipalities value and rely on the natural habitats and water resources within our jurisdiction for the health and well-being of residents, municipalities value the Conservation Authority's work to prevent and manage the impacts of flooding and other natural hazards, and municipalities value the Conservation Authority's work to ensure safe drinking water. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Province of Ontario repeal Schedule 6 of the Budget Measures Act, Bill 229. The province continue to work with conservation authorities to find workable solutions to reduce red tape and create conditions for growth. The province respect the current conservation authority and municipal relationships, and the province embrace their long-standing partnership with the conservation authorities and provide them with the tools and financial resources they need to effectively implement their watershed management role.
Well, that was a very long motion. Councillor Bruni, did you want to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to highlight a couple of things, but before I start, I'd like to introduce the council members that sit on the Conservation Authority: Councillor Gardy, Councillor Nero, and Councillor Hilsinger. Obviously, the province has introduced this bill 229. It's to protect, to support, and recover for the COVID-19. Legislation introduces a number of changes and new sections that could remove or significantly hinder the Conservation Authority's role in the regulatory development, permit appeal process, and in engaging in review and appeal planning applications. So basically, someone can apply and go straight to the ministry for the approval process and bypass the Conservation Authority. Also, the minister can make decisions without Conservation Authority input on any watershed issues. And presently, the Conservation Authority relies on watershed expertise provided by local conservation authorities to protect the residents and the property and the local natural resources on the watershed basis. Changes to the legislation will create more red tape and cost to the Conservation Authority, and that cost will be transferred to the municipalities. So basically, we are asking the government to repeal Schedule 6 of the Budget Measures Act, Bill 229, and I hope council members can support this resolution. Thanks.
Okay, before I go to questions, I'm going to go to Councillor Gardy as a seconder. Councillor Gardy, do you have anything on this?
Aside from the fact that it's bad, irresponsible legislation, no, I hope they will get unanimous support for it. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Christian, starting with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it brief. I thank councillors for bringing this resolution forward. I can't think of any other community in Ontario that needs to request a repeal of this bill. We are always grateful to our Conservation Authority. They play an important role in our community, and I hope that their jurisdiction and reach is never diminished. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Councillor Shoemaker.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Lots of good stuff in this motion. There's some stuff I'd like some further clarification on. I'm not sure, given that it's a bill, I'll be able to get that tonight, but I guess that leaves me a bit torn. Obviously, the changes in the fiduciary duty of the board members is bizarre from a legal standpoint, that somebody could sit on a board and have a fiduciary duty to a different entity. Goes against all principles of governance. And so obviously issues like that and issues like protecting the watershed, the water resources, preventing and managing the impacts of flooding, natural hazards, those are all things that I think there should be no change to. With respect to the sort of Planning Act aspects of the Conservation Authority's authority, I'd look to have more info. I don't know if Ms. Fields is on the line or if it's even fair to ask her what these changes mean, in the sense that would, if someone applies for a minister's order, would they be required still to, provide evidence that there will be no adverse effects? I mean, I'm not averse to there being a multitude of processes or options for different processes, provided that the safety aspects of what the Conservation Authority currently fulfills is there. I mean, these are creatures of statute, and so if the province wants to change how it does, land use planning, then I guess I only need to be satisfied that they are, being thorough in their review, and I don't know that, but I don't know that they're not either.
I don't think, I'll leave it to the city solicitor, but I don't think that she's going to be in a position to answer that, because she's not charged with the parts of this act that affect the Conservation Authority. That doesn't fall under the city's responsibility. So Karen, I'm not sure if you have anything to add or you want to speak to that, if you're familiar with the issues that Councillor Shoemaker is raising.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, I really can't speak to it. I do note that it has just gone through second reading and it's now before the Standing Committee for consultation. So we may see some additional changes as well before it goes to third reading. But I can't specifically answer those questions on the Planning Act right at this point.
Okay. I guess as drafted, I would say there's a multitude of issues, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't. Happy to support, 3/4 or half of this motion, but I can't support it in its current form.
Okay, so Councillor Hollingsworth next.
Thank you. I understand the overall what you're trying to get at. I guess I'm going to present this to maybe Mr. Elliott, just for clarification. Run us through a scenario. Let's say again, a person is planning to build a house within the city on the water, or want to do some reshoring on the water within the city limits. I was under the impression that the ministry and the Conservation Authority gives the responsibility to the city to say, yes, you're able to do it, or no, you're not. I'm just curious if you can just clarify that, if you are able to, or maybe it's Don McConnell.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, I think both agencies have a part in this. There's a high water mark that a building needs to stay above. So the city's involved there under the building department. Then it's M&R, or pardon me, Conservation Authority, M&R, for shoreline permits and that kind of thing. We don't issue permits for shoreline work.
Okay, so there's a lot of gray areas, such as, like you said, high water mark. If the water is going down, St. Mary's River is quite high this year. There's a lot of gray areas that could be stumbling blocks in the future if this goes through legislature, I would think.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Any other comments or questions from council? So seeing none, we'll have a vote on that. Voting's in progress. All in favor, raise your hands, please. Any opposed? Okay, record your votes, please. And Madam Clerk will let us know when they're fully recorded and we can move on to bylaws.
Mayor Provenzano, were you voting in the affirmative?
Yeah, I show as voted in the affirmative. You don't have me?
It flashed. I don't know why.
Okay.
Where it carries 9-2.
Yeah, you can record me that way. Yeah, please. I had cast it.
Okay, I did see the screen flash there, so I don't know how it disappeared, but it passes 9-2. And that will bring us to bylaws. Motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen, and Scott. Resolved that all bylaws under item 11 of the agenda under date November 30, 2020 be approved.
Just a procedural. I failed to note bylaw 2020-207, which I declared a conflict on the motion for the luxury suites. I'm in conflict on the bylaw as well.
207. Okay. I'm going to just give me a second and I will accept that. So the motion will be that all bylaws, save and except bylaw 2020-207, be approved.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
It seems to be stuck turning around. While that's trying to record, I will read the bylaw with respect to the luxury suites. And that is moved by Councillor Vezowalan and Scott, resolved that bylaw 2020-207, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of the agreement between the city and the private suite holders to reduce the annual luxury suite payments on a prorated basis at the GFL Memorial Gardens due to a shortened 2020-2021 Ontario Hockey League season, be passed in open council this 30th day of November 2020. And that is open for voting.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
And that will bring us to the closed motion. And you'll note that there was an additional item in closed subsequent to publication of the agenda. So there are 3 items in closed. That this council move into closed session to discuss 1 item concerning acquisition or disposition of land, 1 item subject to solicitor-client privilege, and 1 item subject to third-party confidentiality. Further be it resolved that should the said closed session be adjourned, council may reconvene in closed session to continue to discuss the same matter without the need for a further authorizing resolution.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
And a motion by Councillors Dufour and Gardy that this council now adjourn.
In favor? Motion is carried.
So that will bring us to the budget meeting.
That's right.
So under agenda item 1 of the budget meeting, I have a motion by Councillors Dufour and Scott that the agenda for November 30, 2020 budget meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
Under agenda item 2, declaration of pecuniary interest, I haven't received any.
We're seeing none. None is declared. You are correct.
And under agenda item 3, preliminary budget 2021, the CFO, Shelley Shell, is on the call.
Okay, Mr. CEO, did you have anything before we went to the CFO?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. As the clerk has noted, the CFO treasurer will take you through the preliminary budget presentation. The one key item I want to highlight is we are still in the pandemic, and there is a COVID-19 impact to next year's budget, as well as the financial impacts that we've managed this year. As you'll see in the presentation, that budget impact for 2021 is estimated at $1.9 million. The budget has been prepared with the assumption that we are hopeful that by July 1st of next year, we have gotten back to life as normal and operations as normal, or at least whatever the new normal will be. So that is the assumption for the budget. It is staff's recommendation that for the 1.9 million, that's almost all representing foregone revenue for the first half of next year, is taken care of through accessing the tax stabilization reserve. As council's aware, we did receive safe restart funding in 2 streams, one specifically for transit operations and the other for general city operations. The amount of money we received for general city operations should be sufficient not only for our financial impacts, but it should have a certain amount carried over to next year. That amount carried over next year would be applied towards this, so we may not have to use the tax stabilization reserve for the full 1.9 million. If there is more transit stream funding received for COVID, we would also apply it against what we would need to access the tax stabilization reserve. And certainly any further operational funding that we may receive in 2021 will be applied for that. But we do certainly recommend that we take care of the $1.9 million identified through use of the tax stabilization reserve for 2021. With that, I'll turn it over to the CFO Treasurer, who will take you through the presentation.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Before you start, Shelley, I just want to say to council's aware of this, but the folks that are watching us at home, this is the budget being tabled. So staff will walk us through this and provide the information. We'll receive presentations, but you will not see us debating the budget tonight or deciding on the budget tonight. We have further meetings scheduled to get deeply into the budget and have discussions about the budget. So I don't want the general public to take away from this night's meeting that we received the budget and the budget was accepted. We're receiving the budget tonight for information. It's a preliminary budget. Council has specific council dates scheduled for December to debate and discuss and decide on the budget. So with that noted, we will go to the CFO. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight, the 2021 preliminary operating and capital budgets are being tabled. Typically, the budget presented is a status quo budget, which assumes that the level of service provided will essentially stay the same while providing for the cost of doing business. The 2021 budget brings new challenges, though. Not only does the city look to keeping affordable services while balancing the standard of services residents have come to rely upon, but now the city is confronted with the impacts of a global pandemic. Maintaining services for the community becomes more difficult with restrictions to curb the spread of COVID-19 virus. The 2021 budget takes into account these additional pressures and will present a recommendation to address this as well. Next slide, please. The agenda for the presentation is shown. I'll provide some details on financial indicators and forecasted economic conditions. A brief summary of the operating and capital budget will follow, ending with a short discussion on the city's financial challenges and the next steps for the budget. Next slide, please. The city of Sault Ste. Marie is in a fortunate financial position. Financial planning and policies put in place over the past years by council and staff have helped to weather the impacts of the pandemic without a lot of undue stress on the taxpayer. The financial indicators noted reflect the positive position of the city, with all but one of the indicators being positive, which the positive ones are reflected by a green check. The discretionary reserves as a percentage of own source revenue reflects a caution, and you'll see that as a yellow check. This is due to the city being slightly lower in relation to our comparators. Growing the reserves for fleet and ongoing capital maintenance was noted in the debt management policy approved by council on September 28th, 2020. Additional reserve allocations for ongoing capital maintenance and equipment requirements are recommended and included in the 2021 supplementary request for council's deliberation. Detailed descriptions of each indicator are included in the CFO's report, which is with the published preliminary budget. The city's economy has struggled over the last several years, and it was expected that manufacturing would turn around in 2020. The global pandemic has affected all the local, provincial, federal, and global economic predictions, with some businesses not able to withstand the crisis. The 2020 provincial budget released on November 5th showed significant impacts to the economy. Ontario's employment decreased by 4.2% from February to September. This reflected a sharp decline of 15.3% to May, and then a recovery of 11.9% after. Ontario's real GDP is projected to decline by 6.5% in 2020, but start to rise again in 2021 by 4.9% and smaller increases in 2022 and 2023. There's a lot of uncertainty regarding the economic outlook, as it is influenced by the evolution of the pandemic and how that will ultimately impact the city. Growing the local economy post-pandemic is important to assist in the recovery. Next slide. We'll now look at the operating budget. Next slide. Property taxes pay for numerous programs and services that the city provides to approximately 75,000 community members. The total municipal tax levy also includes amounts added by levy and local boards, whom the city collects taxes on their behalf but has not control over their budgets. Total expenses, less non-tax revenues, which are items such as user fees and grants, is the amount that is required to be raised through property taxes. The preliminary budget municipal tax levy is $125.6 million, which includes the financial impacts of COVID. Next slide. Total expenses of $185 million represents an increase of 2.0% over 2020. It includes $56.3 million, or approximately 30% of the total, for local and levy boards and outside agencies. The remaining $128.7 million is to maintain city services. Within city services, there are direct service areas such as public works and engineering, community development and enterprise services, and fire services that provide the actual services to the community. These areas account for 7% of the city's share of the levy. Corporate financial, capital, and debt encompass capital investments that support these service areas and brings the total to 90% of the levy that directly supports community services. The remaining 10% is for internal service providers who provide support to the direct service areas. The corporate and governance functions are also included in this category. Next slide. The city share of the levy reflects 51% for salaries and benefits, which is consistent with previous years and is based upon the approved complement level required to meet current approved service levels. As a service organization, compensation will be one of the most significant expenditures, followed by materials and services. Next slide, please. Other revenue for 2021 reflects a decrease of $3.1 million from 2020. The main cause is COVID-19 related impacts, some of which will be offset in part by expenditure decreases. Some of the main changes are a decrease in transit user fees of $650,000, a decrease in community center user fees of $775,000, and a reduction in casino revenue of $560,000. The municipal accommodation tax is projected to decrease by $430,000 as well. There's no levy impact to this reduction, but it will impact the allocations to tourism Sault Ste. Marie and city tourism significantly. Government grants are a significant source of non-tax revenues, the majority of which are from the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. The level of funding has increased slightly over the last 2 fiscal years, which helps to address the ongoing assessment and fiscal challenges of the city. Next slide, please. The preliminary operating budget identifies a 5.75% municipal levy increase. The city's share of the levy is 3.74%, which includes 1.62% for COVID-19 financial impacts. I'm recommending that this tax stabilization reserve be utilized for the COVID-related pressures, which will bring the normal city share of the levy to 2.12%. The use of this reserve is to mitigate unforeseen levy implications and requires a plan so that it is not relied upon for future budgets. It is hoped that additional funding will be provided in 2021 as was in 2020 by the upper levels of government to assist with the pandemic so that the reserve is not depleted for this one crisis. It is anticipated that 2022 will bring stabilized services and normal operations should be achieved. So again, the reserve will not be required. Local and levy boards are almost the same share of the levy increase as the city's share, coming in at a 2.01% increase as compared to the city's 2.12%. The preliminary budget reflects actual levies for police services, Sault Ste. Marie District Social Services Administration Board, and the Conservation Authority. Algoma Public Health was estimated at the overall budget inflationary increase of 1%. Subsequent to publishing the preliminary budget, Algoma Public Health passed their budget and associated municipal levy with a 7% increase. This increase was based upon the revised 2020 levy, which provided a reimbursement to the city in November for the change in the cost sharing with the province. The city's budget was based upon the original levy. The 2020 original levy amount plus a 1% estimated increase is sufficient to cover the 2021 actual APH levy. Next slide, please. With salaries and benefits accounting for 51% of total expenses, a similar portion is reflected in the maintaining services for normal operations. Previously approved council resolutions have an impact of $450,000 or about 15.5% of the normal operation increase. Cemetery costs previously funded in full by user fees and interest on the care and maintenance funds now requires $154,000 through the levy to maintain the service level. A review of user fees is recommended to ensure that the cost of the service and the capital requirements are covered going forward in light of the shift in the types of services requested. The cost of business, which is the ongoing cost to maintain the current service levels outside of salaries and benefits, is $1.1 million. Several significant items include $315,000 for insurance. IT software licensing from Microsoft Compliance is $173,500. There's $40,000 to increase the pavement markings contract for the new bike lanes, and fire hydrant rental costs have increased by $105,000. COVID impacts reflect vastly the same pressures experienced and reported to council during 2020. The forecast of the financial impact is based upon a July 1st, 2020 return to normal operations. This assumption was based upon a potential vaccine rollout and expected gradual resumption of full operations. It is a best guess at best due to the uncertainty of the virus's impact. Actual results, future potential assistance from upper levels of government will impact the estimate. And staff will continue to track the financial impacts in 2021 and report to council in conjunction with the quarterly reports. I will now turn the presentation over to Jake Bruzis, Manager of Finance, to provide a summary of the capital budget. Jake?
Thank you. Attached to your agenda package, you'll find schedules detailing the 2021 preliminary capital budget. This slideshow highlights some of the major capital items proposed for 2021. Slide, please. And the next one. On this slide here, you show that the 2021 capital budget is seeking approval of a total of $38.5 million of investment. Approximately 2/3 of this budget is for roads, storm, and sanitary sewers. Major sanitary projects over the next 2 to 3 years include the addition of a biosolids management facility and West End treatment plant and pump station upgrades. Approximately $4.9 million is allocated to transit fleet and equipment, of which up to 73% is to be funded through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, otherwise known as ISIP. Building capital maintenance projects total $3.4 million for 2021. There'll be significant investments required in this area in the years to come. Waterfront boardwalk repairs required for 2021 total $1 million. This is in addition to the $1.5 million approved in last year's budget. Fire fleet and equipment totaling $550,000. This completely depletes the fire equipment reserve. For the growth projects, we have $500,000 allocated towards the Downtown Plaza project. Next slide, please. Over 50% of the road construction program is funded through grants, with the largest grants being federal gas tax, OSIF, and Connecting Link. These grants are leveraged through city capital funds. Over $3.5 million in grant funding is also anticipated for the transit projects. We have $9 million in proposed sanitary projects, and that's 100% funded from the sanitary sewer revenue. Reserve and reserve fund monies are allocated to certain projects in accordance with availability and the city's reserve and reserve fund policy. As you can see here, there is $2.1 million worth of city capital funds carried over, primarily due to underruns on capital road projects from last year. Next slide, please. This slide here summarizes the results of the staff capital prioritization process. Transit ICIP projects, Civic Center lobby redesign, fire fleet and equipment, and waterfront boardwalk repairs ranked at the top of the list. In your agenda package, you'll find a schedule that details each of the capital projects submitted for 2021. During budget deliberations, council may choose to shift funding from one capital project to another. It should be noted, however, that in order to fully fund the transit projects, the Civic Center lobby redesign, the boardwalk repairs, one-time carryover funding from 2020 capital projects were used. And as mentioned previously, fire equipment reserve is now fully depleted. That being said, supplemental requests are included in 2021 operating budget to address these issues going forward. Next slide, please. On this slide here, this depicts the growth projects as well as those funded through reserves and/or reserve funds. As mentioned previously, $500,000 is allocated towards the Downtown Plaza project. The Civic Center blinds and Memorial Tower rehab projects are recommended to be funded out of their facilities maintenance reserve. On to the next slide. On this slide here is a summary of the proposed 2021 road construction program. The Trunk/Black Road Connecting Link project is contingent upon receiving the grant funding. The third line reconstruction project is the most significant in size for 2021. Public Works and Engineering continues to address resurfacing to the extent that funding is available. A supplemental request is also included in the 2021 operating budget to address shortfalls in the capital works/miscellaneous construction budgets. On to the next slide. This slide here summarizes the proposed 2021 transit ICIP projects. With the ICIP funding, the city will be able to modernize the fleet in due time, which in turn should help to reduce repair and maintenance operating costs for the department. In addition to the fleet replacement projects, the city plans to relocate the downtown terminal in 2021. The total 2021 share of this is $1.3 million. Once again, which is becoming a common theme, the 2021 operating budget includes a supplemental request to cover the city's share of ICIP funding on the go forward. And on to the final slide. So this is just a summary of the 2022 to 2025 capital forecast. As the CFO has mentioned previously, the city will require new long-term debt in the near future. The amounts that are shown in this chart are mainly address cash flow issues due to significant sanitary and landfill projects over the next 4 years. It's not expected to have an impact on the levy. Anticipated projects such as the new fire hall and McMeekin replacement are not included in the forecast, as they have not yet been approved by council. This forecast continues to show unfunded amounts over the next 4 years, as the city's available capital budget funding is not sufficient to cover all of the required projects. So this concludes our 2021 preliminary capital budget presentation, and we'll turn it back over to the CFO for the next slide.
Thank you, Jake. There are several areas of challenge that could affect the city's ability to maintain the current level of service that is being provided. Pandemic recovery, the economic impacts of the pandemic are difficult to estimate. One of the key variables is when normal operations will resume. The economic recovery is difficult to predict, and what was considered normal pre-pandemic may not be the new normal. Ongoing financial forecasting and review during 2021 will assist in navigating the impacts. Negligible assessment growth. As noted, the city's assessment growth is very low and is not projected to make any significant gains in the near term. The cost to provide services continues to increase and will put additional burden on the assessment base. Economic diversification and growth will help sustain Sault Ste. Marie's affordability. Other revenue tools should be further investigated to reduce reliance on a stagnant assessment base and to provide a more fair cost of service to the users that directly benefit from them. Asset condition and infrastructure funding deficit, as noted in the 2015 Assessment Management Plan, which is currently being updated, many assets were in fair to poor condition. Investment resources have been limited, and it's unlikely that this assessment has changed. You've noted, as in Jake's budget presentation, there'll be several items that require investment on the budget for council deliberation as well, and the supplementaries. There is a risk that assets could further deteriorate or fail, resulting in service level reductions. The update of the asset management plan condition and asset information, along with the business profile development and service reviews, should provide a guide to assist in the development of long-term investment strategies. This will be a continued priority for the next few years. Provincial funding is also a challenge for us. The 2021 Municipal Partnership Fund increased by $435,100, or about 2.7% over 2020. This increase helps offset the growing costs of providing services without assessment growth. But the province is reviewing the OMPF criteria, which in turn may impact the funding model. The general direction is to return the OMPF back to its original intent of assisting northern and rural municipalities with more challenging fiscal circumstances. Other provincial and federal funding for various programs and infrastructure renewal greatly assist the city in achieving its priorities as well. There is a risk that this level of funding may not be maintained in future years, placing additional burden on the municipal tax levy or requiring service level adjustments. Next slide. The budget next steps. Once the preliminary budget is presented tonight, the budget deliberation process will begin. Budget deliberations are scheduled for December 7th and 8th, at which time the executive management team will present summary budgets for each of their areas. A decision on the McMeekin replacement project will also be deliberated at in the state. Tax policy, rate options, and recommendations will be presented to council in March or April of 2021 for their consideration and approval. This concludes the budget presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I want to just take a pause here before we get into the other two presentations we'll be receiving and give council an opportunity to ask questions you might have for clarification. If any of the information or material you've been provided with, you have questions on it for clarification purposes. Again, we're not discussing or debating the budget tonight, but if anything you've heard or seen you want some clarity on, you can ask now and we'll get either Malcolm or Shelley or Jake to answer your questions, and then we'll move on to the other presentations. Anything, Council? Councilor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just had a quick question for Mr. Bruzis. I was just wondering, for 2022 in the capital budget forecast under long-term debt, it shows $24 million is forecasted for 2022. Just explain what that's for.
Yeah, sorry, you're breaking up there a bit, but you're referring to the $24 million in the forecast for 2022. $18 million is an estimate for sanitary sewer. The rest is landfill. So we have the major projects coming up for sanitary sewer being basically the West End treatment plant and the biosolids. So we're forecasting $18 million of long-term debt for that, which again is not going to be in addition to the levy, so they'll have its own funding source.
Thanks for that clarification.
Okay. Councilor Shoemaker, you have get some clarification or further information?
Yeah, just thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the time frame, it seems to me, perhaps I'm remembering incorrectly, but did we not get the preliminary budget a fair bit sooner last year? Before the delivery?
To that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, with the way the meetings were scheduled this year, if it were like past years, you would have had the budget table 2 weeks prior to the budget consideration instead of 1 week like today. Did endeavor to get the budget out to you so that council certainly would have it a number of days prior. But there is a compression of time this year.
Okay, yeah, it seemed tighter than last year, but it is what it is.
It is a bit tighter than last year. That's correct, Councilor Schumacher. Councilor Nero?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the McMeekin replacement project, could maybe Mr. White refresh my memory? Are we looking, the report coming back with a 1 pad plus a cost to refurbish the existing arena for a 3 to 5 year period? Is that correct? Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, yes, that's correct. The reports that you will consider next Monday will have the added information that was requested at the council meeting where it was first brought for you. And that's what we had requested, correctly? Because I'm just having a memory. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
No problem. Anything else, Council? Councilor Bezo-Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through to you to Jacob. Jacob, you stated that the majority of the roads budget will be funded through grants such as the federal gas tax. Do you have all confidence that those funding arrangements will be still at the same levels as we've received in the past?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bezo-Allen, yes, the gas tax we set for the next 2 years, so we have a firm number on that. OSIF, we do not have a firm number on it yet as well, but we're predicting the same level as prior year to be conservative. The connecting link, obviously, we're not sure what's going to happen with that one yet. We just submitted the application, so that one's obviously not yet confirmed.
And what would be the impact if connecting link doesn't come through, or that the same level as prior year?
As in prior years, if that does not come through, then the city money that's allocated towards that project would likely be allocated towards a different project within the capital roads budget. In the past, if something like that has happened, it's either gone to resurfacing or another road reconstruction project.
Okay, so the only grant that we have confirmation of currently would be the federal gas tax.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Jacob.
Councilor Christian, you're looking for some clarity?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Through you to the CFO or the CAO, there was mention that there was hope that we'd get support from senior levels of government for ongoing COVID impacts. Could you elaborate at all what if any discussions we've had with them, or any direction they've given, or any indication regarding that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. Discussions are ongoing on these elements. Right now, the province, especially with its Safe Restart Funding Phase 1, is assessing some communities or municipalities that required a second phase of that funding to meet 2020 financial pressures. They need to get that assessed and sorted through before they consider additional funding, certainly for 2021. They are bringing out other programs. One of the things that wasn't addressed in the general stream for Safe Restart funding was capital improvements that you may be required to do because of COVID. And certainly the work we're going to be doing in the Civic Center lobby to reframe how we conduct customer interactions on a permanent basis. That was an example of capital funding that couldn't be covered by the initial Phase 1 Safe Restart funding. However, there is a new COVID-related funding that's being released that can be applied for capital projects. We know our allocation, which is a little over $400,000 on that. We do have to submit projects for approval, but obviously the work we're doing or plan to do in the lobby area will be one of those. So it is a bit of a moving target, but that's to be expected as we're still in the pandemic, where the province is managing through the second wave of it. And it's difficult to get certainty on things right at this time.
Thank you. I'm curious to know if how, where, or if the province is mindful of fiscal year ends and budgets, and how any delay could impact budgets going forward for any municipality. Obviously, it's out of our control. So thank you. That's it.
We thank you, Councillor Christian. Council, do you have any additional questions you have for staff? I see none. Mr. CEO, does that move us on to the local boards presentations?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so we have the Police Service Board as the first. I do believe we have the chief available here. We'll have him. Yeah, there he is. I think he's got the deputy chief with him. Welcome, Chief. Welcome, Deputy Chief. We are ready for you now. Do we have a presentation that we're going to be sharing a screen with, Madam Clerk? There we go. Okay, we're in your hands, Chief. We're in your hands, Deputy.
Okay, so we're going to be 2 slides basically. As you can see, the two. Go to the next. Oh, I'm sorry. Go to the next slide there. A little quicker. There we go. Okay, so the 2021 Sault Ste. Marie Police Service budget was approved by the Police Services Board on October 29, 2020. Just to break it down, that budget estimated an overall increase of 3.4% for 2021. This included a 2% increase in revenues as a result of the court security grant funding. It also represented a 3.61% increase in salaries and benefits as per the collective agreement. Just as a note, this is the result of the financial impact of the 2019 retirement incentive and rising costs of pension and benefits as negotiated by the board. The initial budget presentation to the Police Service Board had an operating and capital cost decrease of 3%. Subsequent to this, an insurance cost reallocation from the city, our final operating and capital budget resulted in a 2% increase. So the total budget for the police services for 21 is 29,570,897. Next slide, please. So a couple highlights here. The continued realignment of city costs has resulted in an operating and capital cost increase of 2%. The budget decision-making efforts of our senior command has resulted in a 3% decrease prior to this reallocation. Maintaining a zero budget increase is a challenge with increasing costs of doing business. The senior command team has made great efforts to scrutinize spending and find spending efficiencies where possible that's under our control. Two of the costs that we've carried forward last year in this, the first is the NG 911 project, continues and has had the completion date extended due to COVID-19. The 2021 budget reflects $122,000. That was part of the cost reallocation in 2020 that police services housed the 911 center. And secondly, the building costs continue to be an ongoing issue with $155,000 in projects in excess of regular maintenance that is required in 2021. That includes HVAC, roof repairs, and electrical upgrades. That's my presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so council, do we have any questions of the chief? I know you have his presentation. Mr. CEO, did council actually also get a copy of the budget, or did they just receive a copy of the presentation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, I believe they just received the presentation. For the outside agencies and levy boards, I believe council generally just receives the presentations and not a full copy of their budget.
Okay. Okay, so do we, council, have any questions of the police chief? Councillor Gardy.
Hi, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the chief of police. You just referenced, you know, the senior command team taking a look at some of the expenses, if you will, that are within your control, and doing your best to bring those down, which we appreciate. Would you kind of be able to explain to the public some of those that are within your control, a few examples of those things, as opposed to those that are not within your control?
Certainly. So obviously the collective agreement, the collective bargaining agreement is outside my control. So the board negotiates with the associations on the contracts. But what's within our control is a very good question. So number one, obviously overtime is something that we have continued to keep down over the past year. I think we've seen reduction in overtime by at least 25% year-to-year comparators, and that's a result of staffing and whatnot. The other piece we control is fleet. We're looking at acquiring vehicles and costs. For example, the F-150 is a good example of reduced costs in a vehicle over roads that are difficult in the winter. So we find that we can stretch those assets out longer and get the same service, and actually better service to the public and to the members. Training is the other piece. As a previous academy director in the OPP, I can tell you training is probably one of the most expensive issues in any industry, but specifically to policing, that we're regulated by the Police Services Act to provide block training every year, as well as those specialized courses. Some of that training budget would have been less this year simply because of COVID and those things that we couldn't get to that we would have got other years. But those are the primary issues. So in summary, it's your overtime, your fleet, your equipment, and training. And the command team meets obviously monthly with the Police Service Board, and we demonstrate where, for example, we were a reduction in overtime for several months, and then you'll have a major occurrence like a homicide that obviously puts your overtime up. So hopefully that gives you sort of a high level overview.
It does. Thanks. And one more question, because I think I may have missed it, just for clarification. You were talking about some upgrades and or maintenance items at the police station. Did you reference 155,000 on that?
Yeah, that is correct, Councillor Gardy. 155,000 building costs, including HVAC, roof repairs, and electrical upgrades.
And over the course, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the chief, if he could speak to this, over the course of the last few years, those maintenance items, do they come in and around that mark the last few years? From my understanding, I'll be very honest, that the building's isn't in the best shape.
2 points. Number one, yes, that number is consistent from year to year in the last 2 or 3 years, and there are challenges in continuing a building that was built in 1967-ish, 68. So yes, I mean, it's an older building. Does it suit the needs now? Yes. In time, no. I think, as I know the board has looked into, they're looking at options in terms of costs and whatnot now and in the future.
Thanks very much, Chief Stevenson.
We have Councillor Hollingsworth, who's indicated to me that she's got. Councillor Hollingsworth, are you back online? We're going to go to Councillor Nero. I think Councillor Hollingsworth is having connectivity issues. So we'll go to Councillor Nero, and if Councillor Hollingsworth comes back online, I'll jump to her. Councillor Nero, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, recently we've been hearing for a while that, things downtown are not going as well as they should be as far as business owners are concerned, break-ins and such, those kind of reports. If you were to increase your presence in the downtown area, would something like that be absorbed in this budget, or would that be another increase to this budget?
Well, Councilor Nero, it's a very good question. Obviously, we have been hearing from councilors, downtown association, from business owners about the concerns in the downtown core. And as a result of that, we've taken some of our room this year in our budget to add additional overtime patrols down in the downtown core during high-risk time periods. So in answer to your question, right now, we are working within our budget where I have room in certain budget accounts to assign that to the downtown core. And it's assigned specifically based on evidence-led policing, where we see certain issues occurring through the week at different times. We'll assign 4-hour shifts. And those officers go down and specifically deal with the issues, not just investigative issues, but also vulnerable people issues, ensuring that that group of people get the attention from the police. As you know, I've said before, it's not always about criminal offenses and laying the charges. It's about getting people the services so that they don't continue the cycle of long-term drug abuse.
Absolutely, and I agree with you 100%. My question was more based on the fact that those services that you speak about certainly are not on the table for in the short term, and hopefully they will come. But in the meantime, we've been pressed, and I know police services have been pressed to have that presence, that extra presence in the downtown area. And I was just really concerned that, you know, with the increase in the budget that you have, that are you showing to us tonight, where would that increase presence show up in this budget? And that was the reason for my question.
Okay, well, maybe I apologize I didn't answer it appropriately.
Well, you answered the question, but I was just concerned that, are we looking at more of a 3.4% increase if you in fact chose to increase your presence downtown, if I could put it that way?
Well, let me put it to you this way. If we wanted to address the downtown core issues more directly, that would take an increase in FTEs. The reality of policing today is that when you have a Bill C-75 that gives you circular justice, when there's a lack of deterrent in the criminal justice system, when there's no long-term treatment, what it means is very simply, we end up dealing with the same person 4, 5, up to 33 times on recalls. That is a labor impact. I don't care how you slice it, but over time, that's going to build up and cause challenges in FTEs. So my answer is, right now we can handle it based on our current FTEs. I've always said to the board that I do my best within my envelope, but if this situation continues, all police services across the north are looking to say the current staffing levels will not do it. When you add the issue of folks that are away from the workplace due to long-term sickness, and you add that, you're already down complement. Then you add an increased labor due to long-term drug and Bill C-75. You have a situation where you have everything coming at once. What we've done in our command team is kept our overtime low so that the community can see we will put extra officers out there during these high-risk time periods to deal with that call for service. And I want to let you know, these officers are not responding to calls for service. They are just dealing with the downtown core issues. And that way we can do it within our budget. But if you ask me, can we sustain that 2 and 3 years? At the current pace, that's going to be difficult.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for that very clear answer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilors, we have Councilor Hollingsworth back here. So we're going to go to Councilor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To you, Chief. Chief, I appreciate that with COVID and so many other challenges that your team is stretched. And I know that in the media over the last several months, we have seen many headlines saying that Premier Ford's going to promise more money to police and other provincial programs. by chance, can you comment on mental health? We talk about mental health quite often. We know that your team has in the past received special training in mental health. Can you comment on if your police department has in the past or potentially will be receiving any new funding to help your team with regards to mental health and also addiction? I know that was one of your main goals, and I apologize if this question is already asked because I was unfortunately off for a bit. And you also maybe comment back in August of 2020, Ontario commented that they were thinking of investing about $6 million to boost the fight against crime and also mental health. Have we received any money from the province? Are we going to potentially receive any? Have you heard?
So I'm going to start off with our CCRT program where the LINs pump money to provide social workers and nurses to travel with our officers. We just got that recently increased over the last year, which was very helpful, very preventative in nature. So now, and we're, we listen to the media and whatnot. We know that, when we go to a wellness check or a mental health call, we now have pretty well 20 hours coverage from Monday to Friday or Monday to Sunday, which has been very helpful. But in answer to your second question, there's been no indication to me as chief that we're getting any additional funds for the LIN, through the LIN or the CCRT program. However, if this is my opportunity to ask for it, I certainly will use the platform to say it would be very beneficial in this community to expand that program. The accolades for that program are not mine, they're your previous chief. We simply built upon it, and it's been a wonderful program, and it saves lives, and it prevents people, and it gets them the right treatment when they need it.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay. So I have Councillor Bruni and then Councillor Vezowan.
Thank you, Mayor. Question to Chief. You mentioned that in this budget, you have allocated money for overtime to patrol the downtown area.
No, I don't think that's what the chief.
Actually, I apologize. I allocated the money from this year while we're doing it now. So I had savings in my overtime, and I've utilized some of those savings for the downtown core. Sorry, it's not for next year's budget.
Okay, so for next year, you haven't allocated any money for the downtown area then, correct?
Not with the, no.
No.
Using it for the services, for the savings we've had this year.
Well, but just Chief, I want Councillor Bruni, I think this is important because I don't want to confuse people in the community. Chief, you in your budget, you have resources for all the quadrants of the city, of which the downtown.
Absolutely, absolutely nothing has changed in our coverage. This was additional coverage for the downtown core.
So every year, Councillor Bruni, there's an amount in the budget that's allocated for overtime because there's always overtime. And what the chief's saying is this year during 2020, some of the reduction in savings he found in overtime, he used those resources to reallocate those resources to the downtown. In 2021, there is a budget line item for overtime.
And will you be using that for the downtown area, Chief?
Councillor, I will use that if I have room in the budget, and usually we do, depending on how we staff our front line.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I just didn't want, Chief, I just wanted to add that clarity because I didn't want people to get the impression that you weren't budgeting for or in the normal course of things for coverage in the downtown. Councillor Vezowan.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief and Deputy Chief. I just wanted to clarify to everyone that the budget does go through a process in terms there is a separate finance committee that's part of the Police Services Board. I'm on that committee with two other board members, and We went through, I think, 3 meetings with the budget, and I want to congratulate the chief and his team, and especially Angela Davey, who's our financial officer, in putting this budget together. There actually was a decrease in capital and operating expenditures, which the police chief was explaining. Those are things that he can control. And then we were looking at increases in terms of collective agreements, staffing, and increases to insurances such as long-term disability and liability insurances. So I just want the public to know that there is oversight on this budget process, that it does go through the finance committee at police board, and that I also want to recognize the hard work that everyone has been doing to make sure increases were as little as possible. And like the chief was saying, there are some things that just are not in anyone's control. And also recognize the allocations that have been done to downtown, and certainly, confirm what both the mayor is saying, that like there is allocations for downtown in all areas of the city within the budget. And it was just the ability this year to have more patrols downtown in the hotspot areas. And I certainly hope, Chief, that community mobilization team will continue. And I really want to congratulate you on making that happen through the jump station. So I just want the public to know that the budget does go through a thorough process, not just police services board, not just when you come here to council. So thanks for that, Chief.
Thank you.
Council, do you have any other questions or comments on the police budget? I think because of my time on that board and the work that we've done there, I do want to make a couple comments. First, I want to thank the chief and the deputy chief and the command staff for their good work at the police service. And I want to recognize, the challenging job that it is. Thank our officers. We saw just recently the loss of a police officer here in Ontario. So we know these are dangerous jobs and they're difficult jobs. But I want to reassure the community of something, because I hear about policing a lot. There's probably nothing I hear about more than policing and some of the challenges that our community is dealing with, specifically with addictions and mental health issues. And what we have to recognize is that the answer in dealing with some of these challenges is much more complex than just policing it. A lot of the people that have addiction and substance use disorders in our community, they're not criminals, and they can't be treated like criminals, and they shouldn't be treated like criminals. But the police service is where a lot of calls get made into. And the police service is the service that receives a lot of the calls. And that's because other parts of our infrastructure, particularly our healthcare infrastructure, are not funded properly. And until those things are funded properly, we will see the pressure on the police budget. I think the presentation the chief has before us today shows that we are at now $29.5 million in our municipal levy for policing. We actually spend closer to between $31 and $32 million on policing. So we are spending a considerable amount on policing. But as the chief indicates, if we do not address some of the other systemic issues we have, and the pressure continues to be on the police services to address and respond to the calls for service, that number will increase. So we have to do our best to encourage our provincial partners and our federal partners to adequately fund some of the healthcare that we very sorely need in this community. We are doing what we can at the police level, and the police services is working hard to address the concerns in the community. And I just want to assure the community of that we recognize the importance of policing, and that we're spending a significant amount on policing. But the answer to a large degree doesn't lie in policing. So with that, I want to just express my appreciation to the services, the service and the leadership at the service. I know the calls and the communications I receive on this, and I imagine that they receive the same amount that I do, if not more. And I want to assure the community that we are aware of its challenges and we're doing our best to address them within our means. Chief, I don't know if you want to, I want to give you the last chance to speak because you are the chief and it was your presentation. If you want to say anything in light of what I've said, you're welcome to do that. And then if not, we'll move on to the library board.
Mr. Mayor, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Chief and Deputy. We appreciate it. So we can move on to the Public Library Board. Madam Clerk.
Roseanne Chan, the business administrator with the library, is on the call.
Welcome to council, Roseanne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to confirm that you are able to see my presentation.
We are able to see your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
So is everybody in the community who would be watching. So we're in your hands and you're ready to go.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to point out that Matthew McDonald, the CEO of the Public Library, is also in attendance of this presentation and will be available for questions afterwards. So, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Roseanne Chan. I am the business administrator of the Public Library. I'd like to thank you tonight for this opportunity to present our Sault Ste. Marie Public Library budget for 2021. Now, due to the pandemic, we've become an even greater resource for the social needs of the community. And that is because our library services have diversified and that we are more than about books. We have other materials that can be accessed by the community, such as magazines, newspapers, movies, music, and audio and ebooks. We also provide information services in that we will research and reference materials and provide information, local history, and genealogy for ancestral roots. At both locations, we provide access to technology, such as computers for internet access and Wi-Fi throughout the building. At our Centennial Library, we have lending laptops that can be borrowed or access to a 3D printer to create widgets. We have a public archives with a viewing room at our North Branch, and presently we have 21 collections focusing on the Algoma area and notable persons. Our newest addition is the Sault Star Archives. As some of you may know, the Sault Star has left their building on Ogarn River Road and has donated to us their archives, 100 years worth of community history. The amount of material given to us will take decades to organize and preserve. Now, in addition to access to our materials, we are also a community hub. Throughout the year, we provide programs to children of all ages, educational workshops, signature events such as Meet the Sioux Greyhounds, or a modern jazz night. At both locations, we have public meeting spaces that can be rented, such as program rooms for larger gatherings or common rooms for meetings. And we have creator and maker spaces, such as the Northern Think Hub in our partnership with Science North, and the Digital Creators Program for teens in our partnership with Digital Creator North. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we have not been able to provide the traditional access to our materials or in-person programs, workshops, and events. However, we have a number of online services as well. The community can search our catalog online, which we have seen an increase of usage by 40%. We have a reading app, so our materials can be accessed and read 24/7 on a mobile device. And we have an e-reading room for kids. Digital resources that allow for the downloading and streaming online, not just audio and ebooks, but also movies, TV shows, music, comics, and more, which we have seen increase to date of 29%. And we have online resources, a focus on literacy skills for children and teens, and research databases. And not only do we provide online access to our materials, we are also adapting to become an online community hub. So far, our staff has created more than 100 videos, which we've uploaded onto our YouTube channel. And for the first time, we've held virtual events, such as our Culture Days, a First Nations Public Library Week, where we celebrate and recognize Indigenous authors, Authorpalooza, where we interview local authors and their latest books, and we've even held a summer and fall Lego challenge for kids. Now, we continue to look for ways to expand our electronic resources for the community to access, as well as converting our programs, workshops, and events to an online format. Now, not surprising, statistically, we've seen an increase in traffic of 35% on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and an increase of 9% to our active library cardholders. We have now more than 20,000 active library cardholders, and in comparison to our 2016 census population, That makes more than 1 out of every 4 individual in the city a card holder. Administratively, we've taken advantage of the downtime as well, because similar to the police services building, our building requires a lot of repair and maintenance. We are in the process of replacing our industrial sump pump and doing waterproofing to prevent future flooding within the building. We've replaced 2 industrial HVAC units thanks to the funding received from the city's capital reserve. And we have converted our outdoor canopy lights to LED to provide additional safety on property grounds. Now, future projects include general building renewal, metal cladding on the exterior of the building, and a conversion of our interior lights to LED. And we have been in consultation with future SSM on whether we will qualify for any energy retrofit incentives for these projects. Of course, our diversified services and repairs and maintenance to the property will not be possible without the generous funding that we receive from the city. Now, last year, a motion was put forward in levy board budgets in that in future budget years, 2 scenarios be brought forward. 1, the recommended budget, and 2, what spending cuts would be necessary in order to accommodate. Now, this is how we will be presenting our budget tonight. We are proposing a balanced budget, and in our proposal, we are asking for a 1.5% increase in our municipal grant from the prior year. Specifically, the 1.5% is to cover wage increases in our collective agreement. Any other expected loss in revenue or increase in operational expenditures due to COVID-19, we're able to offset with savings found the majority of our other spending categories under our control. In turn, City Finance recommended a 1% inflationary increase. Unfortunately, that will leave us in a deficit of about $14,000. I'd just like to note that our net increase in salaries and benefits is about $15,000, in which we have already considered a reduction in our part-time salaries. And as such, the loss of the 0.5% would affect our staffing levels and the daily operations of the library. Now, tonight we are asking for a 1.5% increase. In doing so, would align with the city's corporate strategic plan. In the focus area of service delivery, by preventing a reduction of our staffing levels, we will be able to continue to deliver the excellent customer service to the citizens of Sault Ste. Marie. In turn, the second focus area of quality of life, that we would be able to continue to promote the quality of life advantages to the citizens of Sault Ste. Marie through our diversified services, whether traditionally or digitally, continue to promote and support the arts and culture in the culture corridor through our programs, workshops, and events, and continue to contribute to the vibrant and attractive downtown area of the city. Similar to the art gallery and the museum, we are in close proximity to the new downtown plaza. Now, I'd just like to share that we recently held an online version of our teddy bear sleepover story time and the endearing message that we received from a patron. Thank you, thank you. You cannot believe how much joy you brought to a 3-year and a 5-year-old, not to mention an old grandma. Truly, your work is uplifting and so valuable to a world so uncertain and scared with COVID. It is my fondest hope that you recognize the healing value of your work and that your bosses choose to celebrate your creativity. Your frontline offerings are truly appreciated. When my mom was suffering with cancer, she chose the solace of the library. When she was entertaining her grandchildren, she chose the conviviality of the children's department of the library. When she was meeting friends, she chose the library as a gathering point. No politician can ascertain the true value of libraries as healing and joy generators. Keep on being wonderful and know that the angels of joy are on your side. Kathy McClelland, November 24th, 2020. Now, of course, we're appreciative of any funding that the city is willing to provide to us, whether the 1.5% as we're proposing or the 1% recommended by City Finance. Now, to end on a high note, just like to note that next year the library would have been incorporated for 125 years. We believe it is a milestone we're celebrating and sharing with the community. We are looking for creative ways to celebrate our 125th anniversary and are open to ideas. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. I have requests for questions based on your materials. I will start with Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. First of all, I want to start off on a positive saying, I really like your one-stop, one-stop endless possibilities theme. I think that summarizes it perfectly. As you've said to us before, libraries have changed, and I know they are still changing, and it's quite obvious in your presentation. So here are my few questions. First question, can you comment on, are you looking at any partnerships that can help you with your budget? For example, I know Dell Computers is very good at giving computers and also donations. Also other partners, such as the Weston Foundation, school boards. So again, are you looking at any other partnerships that could help with your budget?
Matthew, would you be able to address Councillor Hollingsworth, please?
Yes. So 1 second. Hi. Through the mayor to Councillor Hollingsworth. There are potential partnerships that we can investigate, and we are always open to being suggested new ones. We are pretty open, as you can tell through our current partnerships with Digital Creator North and the makerspace that's there. Had we had to staff it ourselves and purchase all the equipment, our budget would look very differently. So we take advantage of those opportunities as they come. I know in terms of technology-wise, we also take advantage of our nonprofit status. And there are many opportunities to get reduced software and sometimes hardware. But we apply for grants as we come across them. So in the previous year, we received one through the Ministry of Francophone Affairs to update signage. And so when we come across a grant and an opportunity, we take advantage of it.
Okay. And two other questions just along the same line. I think you comment on some programs you have are already being sponsored by maybe, I don't know, Goma Steel, maybe Gold Corp, some Northern Ontario companies. Are there any companies out there that are currently sponsoring some of your programs or future programs?
Our most recent one would have been the sponsorship from RBC. And that was for our digital creator space, and that was for the technology in that space. We do have an intern that is working out of that space right now. Unfortunately, not a lot we can do with programming, but he's assisting our children's staff through his skills from the Toronto Film School. And they're doing a lot of online programming, children's story times, puppet plays, that kind of stuff. And that was through Young Canada Works funding.
Okay.
Was there any further to that question?
Two other questions. That's great that you're using corporate partners as well to help with your budget. The other piece I'm wondering is because of COVID, you mentioned that there are programs that people can log into. I saw Ancestry and so forth. Are you looking into basically research tools that are medical related? I'm sure you're getting more questions about people want to do some more research in the science and medical side and so forth.
Yeah. Databases are quite expensive. We haven't budgeted for increase in databases. However, we prior to the COVID pandemic, we were in talks with the librarian over at the hospital in terms of putting verified resources on our website that they would share with us. And so that is something, that's a project that kind of been put on hold at the moment, but it is something that we had been investigating.
Okay, great. As a nurse, that's what I was getting at. And my last question, there's other local libraries such as Richards Landing, Hilton Beach, and so forth. Do you have a partnership with these smaller libraries where you have some synergy, and do they sometimes reach out to you for resources? And if they do you sometimes provide, is there a fee if you provide a service to them? So are there other partnerships for these local libraries?
Typically, not a whole lot. The Ontario Library Services North would provide a lot of those resources to them. And that organization is actually amalgamating with the Southern Ontario Library Services just to become Ontario Library Services. So they would do. That being said, I certainly have given advice to other librarians and library staff, Bruce Mines being one of those locations, and the advice I give is free.
Okay, great community spirit. So again, keep up the good work. I'm glad that you're thinking outside the box. And again, one stop, endless possibilities is so true. Thank you, Roseanne and Matthew. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Council. Do we have any other questions for the library board here? Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question for CAO White, I believe, and I'm just wondering, with other areas of the budget, Mr. White, I noticed the 1% inflationary increase applies to operational budgets and seems to be exclusive in other areas of collectively negotiated salaries and benefits. Am I correct in that reading?
If I understand you, Councillor Dufour, you're saying that the 1% is applied to inflationary increase adjustment is applied to things like materials and services and operational items. That's correct. For salaries and benefits, those are generally under terms of contracts for bargaining units or council bylaws for non-union. So those are determined rates based on the contracts. And so whether they are 1% or they're a different percentage, whatever the actual percentage is, we increase the budget by that amount.
Yeah, so with that as the case, I guess I'm just wondering why the library board request to meet their contractual obligations to their bargaining units is a supplemental item for the budget.
In answer to that, really what I've described is the way we do the corporate budget. For the levy boards and outside agencies, we did add the 1%. We don't generally get down to that level of granular detail with the outside agencies and levy boards. Indeed, in past years, or in the more distant past, we didn't even apply an inflationary increase to their budget. So,
okay. As we're not deciding the budget tonight, those are my questions. Thanks.
Any other questions for the staff, the library board? So I want to thank you both for your time tonight and for your work. I appreciate the effort you make to serve our community at your locations. I think it's excellent work and I think you're doing a good job, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank you for that. We will be deliberating your budget during our budget deliberations. We're not deciding on it tonight. So we're not deciding on the request tonight, but we'll be back to you if we have anything further. And obviously you work closely with city staff, so we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Okay, so I think, Council, that brings us to corporate communications. Tessa Vecchio is going to do a presentation on the consultation, the community engagement consultation that we did this year. And then we'll hear that. We'll have any questions of her. And then I think we will accept the budget as tabled and move on. So we're going to corporate communications. Ms. Vecchio.
Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everyone. Ahead of the 2021 municipal budget, the City of Sault Ste. Marie invited feedback from residents and business owners regarding municipal operations. Considering the current environment, the city asked residents and property owners to share their priorities and input virtually this year. As part of our engagement, Corporate Communications created a video to provide information on the budget process and informed our community on how the budget is calculated. Next slide, please. And here's the vision of the video. Oh.
There was no volume. Just give us a second.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so it looks like the video is having some technical difficulties there.
Yeah.
It is available on the city's YouTube channel. And basically the video outlined the ways that we value and receive our tax dollars. So every time your street is plowed or your garbage and recyclables are picked up, you visit the park, catch a bus, borrow a book from the library, your tax dollars are at work. So basically we wanted to remind taxpayers and municipal budget decisions set the foundation for the programs and services that we depend on for our quality of life. So essentially, the city's many services keep our homes and neighborhoods safe and vibrant and encourage business growth and investment, and basically make the city of Sault Ste. Marie a welcoming community. This particular video received over 6,000 views, and it is available on our city's YouTube channel, and it was shared on our website and social media sites. Next slide, please. So other ways that we gathered feedback this year include our traditional budget calculator. So basically the budget calculator enabled taxpayers to indicate the areas where they would like to see their tax dollars utilized. A total of 37 respondents, mostly residential owners, participated in this process. And some of the feedback that we received included more splash pads, dog parks, active transportation, snow clearing, improve and add to community centers, parks and recreational activities, more active transportation, and more recycling options at the landfill. So all of this feedback is listed under Appendix A of this particular report. Next slide, please. New this year, the city created an online survey for residents through SurveyMonkey to provide input into effective ways to build community. So this particular survey generated about 115 respondents. And question one particularly related to creative and effective ways to build community. So some of the feedback we received included more green spaces, including greenhouses and community gardens, more city events and inclusive of all cultures, more creative industries, police funding and outdoor festivals, continuation of downtown street parties, and arts and music festivals. Question two pertained to what would you love to see in Sault Ste. Marie that doesn't currently exist? Some of the feedback included food trucks, large downtown outdoor city squares with increased public art displays and historical monuments, more activities for people under the age of 40, heritage sites celebrating the roots of the area. For example, First Nations art and crafts, fur trade, fishing and hunting exhibitions, and guided tours. More entertainment, creation of green spaces between downtown and the waterfront. And again, we saw expanded recycling and waste collection services for plastics number 1 through 7. Question 3 related to what services are most important to you. And the respondents listed parks, bike trails, clean and safe streets and parks, library services, street plowing, public transportation, police and fire, to name a few. Question 4, we asked the community how satisfied they were with the value they received from their tax dollars on a scale of 1 to 5. And respondents gave the city a 2.9 star rating. For questions 5 and 6, it pertained to mostly confidential information and contact information, as well as follow-up questions. So corporate communications was able then to follow up with those that indicated that they wanted to be contacted, and we directed those particular questions to the appropriate areas within the corporation. And lastly, question 7 asked respondents to provide additional comments, and they included such feedback as they love the growth projects, kudos to staff that planted flowers on Queen Street, fix the roads, and excitement for City Plaza. And all of this survey feedback is available as Appendix B of this report. Next slide, please. Next, we talked a little bit about social media feedback. So numerous ways we engage with our online audiences through 4 budget-specific messages. And what we heard, again, was more gathering places, clean, maintained parks and streets, the continuation of downtown events, and more green spaces. So all of this feedback is attached as Appendix C. Next slide. So these are some examples that you'll see here of that social media engagement. Next slide, please. And the last slide. So these are some of the things that we've heard so far. And again, just a reiteration of the messages that were listed earlier. Next slide, please. We did receive some email submissions, a total of about 16 email submissions that are included as Appendix D of this report. Again, some of the feedback included more flower beds pertaining to snow plowing messages, questions around taxes during the pandemic, a consideration of a dedicated place to play pickleball, and improving road conditions. Next slide, please. And new this year, in light of the situation that we found ourselves in, similar to the mayor's COVID-19 virtual town halls, in speaking with the Budget and Finance Committee, we discussed that staff worked with Village Media to host a Budget 2021 virtual town hall with Mayor Provenzano and CAO White. So Village Media led the initiative and provided 2 separate opportunities for readers to submit questions. And the virtual town halls aired on September 30th and October 7th. Town Hall number 1 included a general overview of the budget process, timelines, and the province's COVID-19 contingency fund, as well as questions pertaining to Hudson Street, public works processes, the downtown plaza, streetlight synchronization, and support for small businesses. Town Hall number 2 saw a discussion about housing and homelessness, a facility to accommodate and treat those with drug addictions. We also discussed the city's performance indicators, downtown flooding and insurance costs and repairs to homeowners. And lastly, there was a discussion on the bus terminal relocation and the downtown plaza. Again, you could view these videos online. The dates were September 30th and October 7th, and they can be found on Village Media's YouTube channel. Next slide, please. These were some of the advertising initiatives that we used to help generate interest within the community. Locally, we advertised with Post Media, Rogers Media, Superior Media, and Village Media. And corporate communications also boosted ads socially through our Facebook advertising and in addition to the city's website. And the last slide, please. Overall, considering it was a virtual consultation, we thought it was very successful, with hundreds of citizens being engaged in the process this year and providing really thoughtful feedback. We were really appreciative of all the participation from our community and the suggestions to help us all set our collective goals and build a great city together. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, so council, we have that in front of us, that report in front of us. Do we have any questions of Ms. Vecchio? I would like to just acknowledge the work and thank her and the very small comms team we have for good work here. I think that this has come a long way from when we started, when I started 6 years ago, and some of us started 6 years ago. It's come a long way, and we're really working hard to engage the community here, and I think we're doing it in some different ways than we used to. So thank you to Tessa and the team for that good work. I don't see any questions. Madam Clerk, I'm going to pass it back to you for whatever resolution we need to pass related to this.
We've got a motion by Councillors Bezo, Allen, and Gardy, resolved that the report of the Communications Officer dated November 30, 2020 concerning Budget 2021 community engagement be received as information, and that is open for voting.
All in favor? That's passed. And just register the votes on eScribe, please. So council, that brings us to the end of this meeting. I don't want to go to the clerk to pass the closing resolution. If there's anything that any of you have before I do that. Just to reiterate to the community, this was tabled tonight. We'll be discussing it more thoroughly at our scheduled budget meetings, and I encourage everybody to tune into those. Madam Clerk, I don't see anybody with any additional comments or questions, so I will go to you for the next motion.
We have a motion by Councillors Dufour and Gardy. Resolved that this council now adjourns.
All in favor? Adjourned. Council, we need you to call back into the closed line for the follow-up and the closure of the end of our closed meeting.